Chapter 1552. Tang Zheng looked at Lu Qingmei, who was lying limp on the bed. He carefully examined the pure yang energy in his body. It was clear that his realm had increased too much and his cultivation had increased too quickly. The corresponding pure yang energy had also erupted too quickly. After tossing and turning for half the night, the pure yang energy was still not completely neutralized. It could even be said that half of it had not been neutralized. No, I can't leave behind any hidden dangers. In addition, with such a big commotion just now, if I do it carelessly, I'm afraid other people will have opinions. I won't be able to have a good time tomorrow. He patted his chest and glanced at his lower body. Brother, I'll have to trouble you then. Mu Hongyan looked like she was drunk as she half closed her eyes in satisfaction. Seeing Tang Zheng mumbling to himself as he got off the bed, she lazily asked, "What are you going to do?" "Hi hey, of course I'm going to do something good. You should rest well," Tang Zheng said with a mischievous smile. Mu Hongyan looked at his smiling face and knew he was up to no good. However, her body was weak and she was too lazy to care about him. She comfortably laid down. Tang Zheng's clothes had already been burnt to a crisp. He looked at his naked body. Since there were no outsiders in the villa, and he wasn't afraid of being seen in the middle of the night, he simply swaggered out. Half asleep and half awake, Mu Hongyan heard another cry. She thought it was a dream, so she turned around and said in a daze, "Even dreams are not peaceful. AI, that little guy is too torturous." Suddenly, her eyes flew open, her gaze fixed on the outside. That cry became exceptionally clear. He finally knew that this was not a dream, but reality. She instantly understood why Tang Zheng had sneaked out. Suddenly, she said in embarrassment and anxiousness, "This guy actually went to another room. He's really not afraid of spraining his waist. AI, whatever. I can't be biased. At least he has a little conscience." After experiencing a fierce battle, her body was weak and her eyelids were heavy. She simply did not want to think about this ridiculous guy and fell asleep. That night was truly absurd. No one had ever been so absurd before. The screams only stopped when the sun was about to rise. In the end, Tang Zheng was chased out of Li Xiaotian's room. He had no choice. He was the last one to go to her room, and he had made her wait for him all night. Naturally, he was angry. Although Li Xiaotian was usually obedient to her and obeyed her orders in the company, when men and women were in bed, how could they still follow the company rules? Li Xiaotian naturally recovered her feminine side. Moreover, Li Xiaotian had practiced the art of seduction before, so her skills in that aspect were much better than others. She allowed Tang Zheng to try many things that he had never done before, making him enjoy himself so much that he forgot to return. Fortunately, his body was stronger than most people's, and he also had a divine technique to protect his body. Otherwise, he would have lost half of his life after such a night of torment. Even so, when he finally left Li Xiaotian's room, his legs were a little weak, and he staggered back to his room. He did not sleep, but cultivated. Cultivating was a better way to recover than sleeping. After the pure yang energy was neutralized, the circulation of his true qi was exceptionally smooth, and all kinds of divine abilities were used freely. His body recovered very quickly. By the time the sun rose to the middle of the sky, he had completely recovered. He was full of vigor and could fight for another 300 rounds. When he opened the door, he found that only Nana and Linger were playing in the living room. The others had not woken up yet. Aya! Tang Zheng suddenly slapped his head. He had actually forgotten about the two of them. He had caused such a big commotion, and it would be a great sin if it affected their minds. However, fortunately, they did not look at him strangely, so he was slightly relieved. Of course, Linger had heard those voices. Although she was inexperienced, she had struggled in the entertainment industry for so long, so how could she not understand what was going on? However, she was not surprised at all because in her heart, her master was high and mighty, omnipotent. To be able to be with him, that was a supreme honor and luck. She could not help but envy them in her heart. Tang Zheng consciously went to the kitchen to make a table of delicious food. They had exhausted themselves in the battle last night and needed to be well nourished. When the sun was high in the sky, the others gradually woke up. Each of them looked radiant and beautiful. They looked at each other and hurriedly turned their heads away. The shyness in their eyes could not be concealed. After this battle, everyone's relationship was truly laid out on the table. If the eldest brother did not say anything, then no one would say anything. Especially when they saw that Tang Zheng had made a table of food, a sweet feeling emerged in their hearts. It was unknown if the others were aware of this and deliberately created an environment for them, but no one came to the villa for the whole morning. After lunch, Linger left. She had to go back to work. She had the potential to be a workaholic. Tian Chanzi also came. He looked at him meaningfully, then swept his gaze over the others and said in a low voice, "You must be tired from last night." Tang Zheng patted his body and said, "Do I look tired to you?" "Young man, even if your body is good, you should take it easy." "Heh, at that time, you still righteously rejected my suggestion. Now, aren't you doing it? You are a celestial with a 9-yang saint body. This is your fate. You should accept it," Tian Chanzi said. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and inwardly sighed, saying in his heart that the capable should do more work. Since this is my life, then I can only accept it. If other men heard these words, they would definitely want to chop him to death. They also wanted to accept their fate, but they did not have this fortune. When the others heard the two of them muttering, they fiercely glared at Heaven Monk. They were old and disrespectful, one old and one young, neither of them were old things. Cough cough. Tian Chanzi coughed twice. He seemed to have recovered his seriousness and said, "The spring festival is coming. We should try to settle the matter in Dianan before the spring festival." Tang Zheng nodded. He also had this intention. Then we should find a day to leave as soon as possible. What are we waiting for? Can't we do it today? Don't tell me you are too tired and have no energy. Tian Chanzi looked him up and down and mischievously asked. Nonsense, how could I have no energy? His energy had indeed recovered. After neutralizing the pure yang energy and cultivating, he had already recovered to his peak state. Moreover, he did not need to worry about the pure yang energy erupting. This was the best time to fight. Then don't dawdle, Tian Chanzi urged. We also want to go. Hearing this, the other women all stopped what they were doing and looked at Umo with burning eyes, volunteering to do it. I also want to go. Nana heard the two words Dianan. That was her hometown, so she also raised her head. Her eyes were firm and did not allow anyone to refuse. To read the latest novel without error, please visit Chapter 1553. Everyone wanted to go to Dianan and help Tang Zheng. However, this was unrealistic. In the end, Mu Hongyan and Nana were approved to go together. Other than them, even Li Xiaotian did not have this opportunity. After she took control of the Li Palace, she had taken several risks with Tang Zheng. In order to balance the relationship between the women, Tang Zheng could not allow her to go together. Otherwise, the others would definitely have objections. This trip to Dianan was extremely dangerous. Tang Zheng did not want them to take the risk. In the end, they talked until their mouths were dry, and Umo did not agree to anyone else. Tian Chanzi naturally could not go. There must be a general in the family. After the Empyrean fairy left, Tian Chanzi became the most suitable candidate. The others were unhappy. There was nothing they could do even if they went. They could only hold back their energy and hope that their cultivation would improve faster. Only then would they have the opportunity to help him and not be a burden. In addition, there were also the four symbols, Azura, and Thundercloud beasts traveling with him. He would not ignore these generals. After Little White left, these few divine beasts did not seem to be in high spirits and were sullen. Therefore, Tang Zheng planned to use battle to stimulate them. Especially the Thundercloud beast, it was the first mythological beast to follow him. Although it was due to Xiao Bai's face at the beginning, now it had sincerely pledged allegiance to Tang Zheng. On the somersault cloud, Tang Zheng, Mu Hongyan, and Nana stood on the clouds and looked down. Nana was extremely excited. She kept jumping up and down, as if she wanted to test whether this marshmallow-like somersault cloud was elastic or not. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth hung a shallow smile as he watched her mischief. Mu Hongyan advised her a few times, but Nan did not listen. It was as if she knew that Tang Zheng was her backer and would comply with her every wish. Tang Zheng also really loved this little girl. During this period of time, he really didn't accompany her properly. She had grown a lot taller and more beautiful. Mu Hongyan helplessly said, "Just give in to her. When the time comes and she develops all kinds of bad habits, I will find you to settle the score." Tang Zheng lovingly stroked Nana's hair and said, "She's so obedient. How could she have any bad habits? Don't worry too much." Mu Hongyan smiled knowingly. She knew her daughter very well. She had been well-behaved and sensible since she was a child. Especially after she recovered from her illness, she often helped Mu Hongyan do what she could. She also said that her mother used to take care of her too hard, and now she wanted to repay her filial piety. Mu Hongyan was moved to tears. "Will I be able to see Grandpa when I go back this time?" Nana asked expectantly with her big, sparkling eyes. Ever since the mother and daughter broke off with the Long family, they had never returned to the Long family in Dianan. Naturally, they had never seen Long Xianyuan again. Hearing this, Mu Hongyan's expression became unnatural. If there was anyone in the huge Long family that they would still miss, it would only be Long Xianyuan. Back then, Long Xianyuan treated them quite well, especially doting on Nan. It was a pity that he did not truly fulfill his responsibility as the head of the family and allowed his youngest son to repeatedly harass and target the mother and daughter. Therefore, Mu Hongyan still had a knot in her heart. Mu Hongyan glanced at Tang Zheng. This matter was not something she could decide. Tang Zheng patted his head. He had actually forgotten a very important matter. Back then, in order to sow discord between Ji Wuxiang and Qi Yu, he had transformed into Qi Yu and shattered Long Xuanyuan's dantian. Later, he forgot to tell Mu Hongyan. Now that she mentioned it, he remembered again. There's something I haven't told you yet." "What is it?" "It's about Nana's grandfather." Mu Hongyan's heart tightened. She knew that Ji Wuxiang had chosen Dianan as his base camp. It must be inextricably linked to the Long family. Could it be that Long Xianyuan had encountered an accident? "What is it?" "His dantian was shattered by me and he became an ordinary person." Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment, but still revealed the truth. Mu Hongyan heaved a sigh of relief. So that was the case. This was much better than she had imagined, although she also knew what a shattered dantian meant to a martial artist. But what was wrong with being an ordinary person? At least he could keep his life and not get involved in Ji Wuxiang's matters. He could live a quiet life and spend his old age in peace. With the wealth of the Long family, it was not difficult for him to be a rich man in his old age. Mu Hongyan pondered for a long time and said, "This is the best ending for him. It's good that you understand." "I had no choice," Tang Zheng explained. Mu Hongyan squeezed out a smile, held his hand openly and said, "I know your difficulties. Since I am already by your side, I will naturally think for you. The past is already a thing of the past, and I don't want to think about it anymore." Nana was a cultivator, so she did not know what a shattered dantian meant. She was only immersed in her own world, alive and kicking. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew over, and a figure flew to the front of the somersault cloud. Thundercloud Beast. "Master, we are about to reach the border of Dianan. There are no abnormalities for the time being," the Thundercloud Beast reported. The Thundercloud Beast took the lead and flew to the front to investigate the situation. "Don't go, stay by our side. We are about to enter the border of Dianan. Although we are in the sky, the celestial chest covers the sky and the earth. We may not be able to escape Ji Wuxiang's eyes. The thundercloud beast rubbed its fists. It had not exercised its muscles and bones for too long, and it could not wait to fight. After flying for a while, they had truly entered the border of Dianan. In the distance, there were hundreds of thousands of mountains that rose and fell one after another. It was almost impossible to see the end at a glance. That place carried too many memories of Tang Zheng and the thundercloud beast. He could not help but look into the distance. After a while, he slowly withdrew his gaze and fell on the city under his feet. The terrain of Dianan was complicated, and the mountains rose and fell. As a result, the city was built on the mountains and was not orderly. Hey, why has Dianan changed so much? Suddenly, Mu Hongyan said in surprise, staring at the city under her feet. Why do you say that? Although Tang Zheng had come to Dianan several times, he had not carefully observed the city. Mu Hongyan had lived in the city since she was a child, so naturally, she knew more about it than him. Mu Hongyan pointed to a huge flat ground not far away and said, "There used to be a museum. It was quite large, but now it is gone." Her eyes turned, and she pointed to another place and said, "There used to be a government department. A very magnificent office building was built there, but now it is gone." Mu Hongyan pointed out a few more places. Anyway, it was very different from the Dianan in her memory. There had been earth-shaking changes. A person's memory would not have such a big mistake. The only explanation was that Dianan had really been turned upside down, and it was no longer the Dianan of the past. Tang Zheng believed in Mu Hongyan's judgment and looked in the direction of her finger. Gradually, his expression became dignified. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1554. Tang Zheng's expression was solemn as he gradually saw through the clues. If the huge southern Yunnan was treated as a chessboard, then the places that Mu Hongyan pointed out were a few key nodes. Pulling one would affect the whole body, which was extremely important to the celestial chess. He suddenly realized, no wonder there was such a huge change. Ji Wuxiang has already treated the entire southern Yunnan as a big chessboard and set up a huge celestial chess. Those few points are the places where changes or sacrifices must be made. He was extremely shocked. It seemed that Ji Wuxiang had already completely controlled southern Yunnan. Southern Yunnan had already become a country within a country, his independent kingdom. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to complete so many things in such a short period of time. He's really going all out. Is he going to stay in southern Yunnan and not leave? Although this was a big deal, it could only affect southern Yunnan and had little impact on other places. However, when Tang Zheng looked at the 100,000 mountains not far away, he knew the meaning of Ji Wuxiang's move. Southern Yunnan was backed by the 100,000 mountains, and it was not a small place. Once the city and the 100,000 mountains were used as a huge chessboard, under the effect of the celestial chess, it was completely possible to use a fulcrum to pry open the entire country. At that time, he could really rely on southern Yunnan to affect other places. When he thought of this, he stared at the 100,000 mountains with bright eyes. He did not know if he did not look, but when he looked, he was shocked. He and the thunder cloud beast had both overlooked one point. The 100,000 mountains seemed to have changed as well. Thunder cloud beast, look at the 100,000 mountains. He hurriedly shouted. The thundercloud beast looked over, and after a while, its eyes bulged. It had lived in the prehistoric heavenly tomb for so many years, so it was very familiar with that area. Now that it looked over there, dark clouds covered the area, and a huge flat ground seemed to have appeared on the ground. Without a doubt, that was definitely Ji Wuxiang's doing. The man and beast looked at each other. There was no need to say anything. They already understood each other's thoughts. Tang Zheng's face was as gloomy as water as he said, "It seems that we still underestimated Ji Wuxiang. The speed of his actions is far beyond our imagination." Ji Wuxiang had already extended his evil claws to the 100,000 mountains. In other words, what he had already done, or was currently doing, could completely multiply the power of heavenly chess, to the point where he could use a single point to move an entire country. In addition, there was also Mount Buzhou in the 100,000 Mountains. Yan Qingyi had once predicted that Mount Buzhou would be the key to the end of the world. Could it be that the apocalypse was related to Ji Wuxiang? Tang Zheng was very clear about the power of the heavenly chess. Once the heavenly chess went out of control, he was not sure if it would lead to the end of the world. After hearing their words, Mu Hongyan also realized the seriousness of the matter and said, "Then what should we do next?" Tang Zheng retracted his gaze from the 100,000 mountains and said, "Then let's go to the 100,000 mountains first." Mu Hongyan thought for a moment, then shook her head and said, "Things have developed to such a serious point. We must cut the Gordian knot and disrupt the enemy's pace as soon as possible. Therefore, I think it would be more effective to divide the troops into two groups." Mu Hongyan managed a company with so many people, so naturally, she had her own opinions and judgment. Therefore, her words touched Tang Zheng's heart. However, Tang Zheng still refused without hesitation. "It's too dangerous." The danger was not to Tang Zheng, but to Mu Hongyan and Nana. Mu Hongyan was very clear about this. However, if she always lived under the protection of Tang Zheng and let him shelter her from the wind and rain, would she be helping him or dragging him down? This time, she set a goal for herself, that was, she must not drag him down. If he was dragged down because of her when they just arrived in Dianan, she would rather go back. Nana and I are not powerless to protect ourselves. Moreover, we were born and raised here. You are all familiar with it. Therefore, if there is really danger, we will escape. There will always be a place for us to hide in the streets and alleys. Mu Hongyan said persistently. Nana also nodded seriously. "Brother, I have grown up. I will protect my mother well and won't let outsiders hurt her. You can rest assured." Obviously, the little fellow was also very confident. Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He touched her head and said, "What are you doing here?" Nana pouted and said, "I'm not here to join in the fun. I'm here to help." Tang Zheng understood Mu Hongyan. Once she made a decision, he certainly could not change it. Moreover, her words were very persuasive. "Well, but the Thundercloud Beast must follow you and protect your safety. Thundercloud Beast, do you hear me? You must protect their safety," Tang Zheng solemnly exhorted. The Thundercloud Beast flapped its wings a few times and said, "Master, you can rest assured. If anything happens to them, you can hold me responsible. In addition, if there is really danger, hide and protect yourself first. This is the most important thing." Tang Zheng held Nana in one hand and Mu Hongyan in the other. Mu Hongyan nodded meekly and said with a smile, "I know. Wow, Nana is finally going to beat the bad guys. I'm so happy." Nana was in high spirits. She suddenly jumped up and kissed Tang Zheng on the face. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. "Nana, you sneak attacked me. He he he." Nana smiled even more brilliantly. Her two little dimples were round and beautiful. She tugged at Mu Hongyan's hand and said, "Mother, I already kissed Big Brother. You should kiss him too. Kiss me too." Mu Hongyan's face immediately turned red. This was really her own daughter. "Yes, I have to kiss him. This is to give Big Brother the courage to fight. It's always like this in the movies," Nana said in a serious tone. Mu Hongyan rolled her eyes. What kind of lousy movie was that? She would definitely not watch it in the future. She could not continue to poison her daughter. However, she could not dissuade her daughter. She leaned over and kissed Tang Zheng on the face. Although she did not stop, the two's hearts trembled slightly. They looked at each other with eyes full of deep affection. "Thank you, Nana. Then I will also give you courage." Tang Zheng deduced many things from one example. He kissed Nana on the face and then affectionately kissed Mu Hongyan on the lips. Mu Hongyan was shocked as if she had been electrocuted. She stared blankly at him. Her white cheeks turned red, directly to her ears. It was sweet and shy. Oh, oh. Big Brother gave us courage. We are filled with courage. Thundercloud beast, hurry up. Let's fly down. Nana jumped onto the thundercloud beast. The thundercloud beast immediately grew bigger and carried her. Mu Hongyan and Tang Zhang's hands were still tightly held together. They were reluctant to part. Their eyes met, filled with affection. Mu Hongyan gently said, "You must be careful. You must take care of yourself. Don't try to be brave. You too. With my current cultivation, it will not be easy for Ji Wuxiang to hurt me." Tang Zheng said confidently. Chapter 1555. 100,000 Great Mountains, revisiting old places, gave birth to many emotions. The miasma from back then had long since disappeared. In the distance was the homeland of the Witch clan. It had long been destroyed in the Great War, leaving behind only a mess. In front of him was the Witch clan's holy land. Xiao Bai was born here, but because of the volcanic eruption, his appearance had long changed. Memories gushed out from the bottom of Tang Zheng's heart like spring water. Along the way, he saw a few places razed to the ground. Lakes were filled in, mountains were pushed down, and towering trees were cut down. Everything seemed to be far from what he remembered. Tang Zheng's heart gradually turned cold, and he muttered to himself, "Ji Wuxiang is really crazy to set up such a huge chess game." Back then, the heavenly chess that Ji Wuxiang had set up in the capital seemed vast, but in reality, it could only be considered an experimental version. Now, the heavenly chess had merged with Dianan and the 100,000 Great Mountains, and its area was vast, extending to the end of the horizon, causing one to feel a deep sense of shock. If anyone else saw this scene, they would definitely rush down and destroy the nodes of the heavenly chess. However, Tang Zheng understood the heavenly chess very well, and knew that these nodes were just minor details. There was nothing to worry about, and even if they were destroyed, it would not affect the entire game. He had already deduced according to the heavenly chess and confirmed that two places were the core of the heavenly chess. One was Dianan City, and the other was the prehistoric heavenly tomb. One in the east and one in the west, they were the head and tail of each other, echoing each other from afar. This was the true core node of the heavenly chess. Therefore, his target was the prehistoric heavenly tomb. The prehistoric heavenly tomb was already in sight. The aura inside was constantly changing, like the center of a storm, but also like another world. As expected. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up, confirming his guess. Whiz! Suddenly, a sound of something tearing through the air silently approached, interrupting Tang Zheng's thoughts. A sharp force shot over from below, heading straight for the somersault cloud. Tang Zheng stood on the somersault cloud. Looking down, it was just an ordinary cloud. Of course, other than the fact that its flying speed was a little fast. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He thought to himself that the other party really couldn't hold back anymore and actually took the initiative to attack. He didn't think that he had gone deep into the 100,000 Great Mountains without being discovered by the heavenly chess. Although he was well versed in the heavenly chess and could use some rules to avoid detection, it was impossible for him to remain undiscovered for a long time. If that was the case, then Ji Wuxiang was too weak. Tang Zheng lowered his head to take a look. It was a beam of light that had already arrived below the somersault cloud. Whoosh! A beam of sword light flew out of his hand and easily struck the invading enemy. There was a loud explosion, and everything was calm again. Whoosh! Whoosh! However, the calm didn't last for too long. Numerous sounds of the air being torn apart arrived unexpectedly like a violent storm slapping the ground, covering the sky and covering the sun. Interesting. It was actually a rain of arrows. The strangest thing was that every arrow had a trace of the power of the stars on it. Tang Zheng glanced at the sky and found another clue. The sky above the 100,000 Great Mountains was actually different from the sky elsewhere. Ordinary people couldn't see the difference, but Tang Zheng could. Although it was broad daylight and the sun was shining brightly in the sky, there were actually faint glimmers of the stars. This is the effect of the heavenly chess. The heavenly chess absorbed the power of the stars, and martial artists could already absorb the power of the stars. Therefore, the power of the stars in Dianan was especially abundant. When Tang Zhen entered Dianan, he realized this. Especially when he went deep into the 100,000 great mountains, this feeling was especially strong. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth had become very scarce. Instead, the power of the stars was increasing. Suddenly, he realized a key point. The less spiritual energy there was, the more it would limit a cultivator's strength. Once the spiritual energy was completely gone, then once a cultivator was exhausted, he would not be able to replenish his true qi. Ji Wuxiang's plan is really too good. Once there is no spiritual energy in Dianan, then this place will become his independent kingdom. Only his warriors can cultivate to their heart's content and increase their strength, and the only threat is the cultivators. However, cultivators can't fight in Dianan for too long, then he will truly be in an invincible position. The more Tang Zhen thought about it, the more shocked he became. Ji Wuxiang could definitely fight steadily step by step, and then use Dianan as a stronghold to expand outward step by step. In the end, the entire country and even the world would become like this, and then the cultivators would no longer have a place to live. Without spiritual energy, it would be a disaster for cultivators, but ordinary people would not be affected. Warriors would become high and mighty, and they would have to submit to Ji Wuxiang. A few hundred years ago, Nuera expelled the cultivators to the sky beyond heaven, allowing the warriors to become the top group. Now that the cultivators have returned, the advantages of the warriors have disappeared. I never thought that there would be another Ji Wuxiang. He was even smarter than Nuera, and even more capable. He actually came up with such a method. He didn't even need to expel the cultivators, he could just kill them all. Tang Zhen was previously worried about the end of the world, but now he didn't have the mood to worry about this. Furthermore, he wasn't sure if his guess was correct. However, one thing was certain: if he did not stop Ji Wuxiang, then the end of the world of cultivators would definitely come early. The Azure Dragon Palace Hall was created by Nuera, and Ji Wuxiang was Nuera's successor. What happened hundreds of years ago was repeated in another way. I will definitely not let history repeat itself. Ji Wuxiang, I will definitely destroy your scheme. Tang Zhen silently strengthened his conviction. So. The rain of arrows had already arrived in front of him, and the mysterious hidden sword flew up. Shwa, rays of sword light shot out, dazzling and dazzling, like fireworks, instantly blocking the somersault cloud. Whoosh. The sword light spun and unexpectedly met the rain of arrows. Boom, continuous explosions resounded through the sky, spreading throughout the 10,000 huge mountains. Immediately, the scene in the prehistoric heavenly tomb changed. The aura became more and more chaotic, and it was truly like the eye of a storm, causing people to tremble in fear. Tang Zhen stared straight at this scene, completely ignoring the endless rain of arrows, and shouted, "Somersault cloud, go!" The somersault cloud's speed increased, and it was not afraid of the rain of arrows at all. The rain of arrows was completely blocked by the sword light, and was unable to take even half a step into the lightning pool. Halt! The rain of arrows was ineffective, and the martial warriors below could no longer remain calm. They all rose into the air and flew. Although they were martial warriors, ever since they absorbed the power of the stars, everything had undergone a tremendous change. Not only had their strength increased, flying in the air was no longer exclusive to cultivators. More than 10 martial warriors blocked Tang Zheng's path forward. Tang Zheng stood in the clouds and looked at them, not even wanting to say a word. Shwa! The hidden mystic sword swung out calmly, and the sword light cut through more than 10 people. They didn't even have time to scream, and fell from the sky one after another. The rain of arrows that covered the sky seemed to have lost its support, and fell from the sky. To read a novel without mistakes, please visit Chapter 1556. With the obstacles removed, the somersault cloud flew into the prehistoric heavenly tomb like a ray of light. The pursuers soared into the air from the ground, but were left behind. The prehistoric heavenly tomb was already surrounded by a strong storm. Tang Zheng was inside and immediately realized the problem, and couldn't help but exclaim, "There's no more heaven and earth spirit chi here?" Yes, the heaven and earth spirit chi in the prehistoric heavenly tomb had already disappeared, leaving only the surging power of the stars. The power of the stars above the 9 heavens had all gathered here. The storm-like scene was completely caused by a large amount of star power. Fortunately, Hong Yan and the rest didn't come. Otherwise, there would be no way to fight normally here. He couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Mu Hongyan's unintentional action was actually a blessing. This place is completely useless to other cultivators, but it's too useful to me. It's as if it's tailor-made for me. Ji Wuxiang never thought that I would take the risk and come to this prehistoric heavenly tomb. I want to absorb all the star power. Tang Zheng immediately activated his power, extended his hand, and the vast and mighty power of the stars entered through the pores of his fingers. In an instant, the aura of heaven and earth became more and more berserk, and the power of the stars gathered towards him from all directions. How dare you! Suddenly, an explosive roar came from the center of the storm. Then, a ray of light shot out from the eye of the storm. There was no sound, not even the sound of air being torn apart. It was very different from the rain of arrows that filled the sky. However, the biggest difference was in power. The power of this ray of light was many times greater than the rain of arrows. Tang Zheng had no choice but to stop. The speed of the light was too fast. In a moment of desperation, he could only hold the mysterious hidden sword horizontally in front of his chest. The sword light filled the sky, transforming into a screen of light, blocking the front of the somersault cloud. Boom! The ray of light struck the sword light. The sword light trembled intensely a few times before completely shattering, turning into specks of light that dissipated. However, Tang Zheng had already prepared his next move. With a shake of the hidden sword, he became one with the sword and flew out from the somersault cloud, slashing at the eye of the storm. As they approached the eye of the storm, they immediately saw a figure within it. This person was none other than Ji Wuxiang. He was surrounded by layers and layers of astral energy, appearing extremely mysterious and invincible. Ji Wuxiang's gaze swept over, causing the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. He immediately locked onto Tang Zheng and said in shock and anger, "Tang Zheng, you actually dared to come here and throw away your life. In that case, I will fulfill your wish." In the battle of the capital city, Ji Wuxiang had returned in defeat. It was a great regret, but it was also a great humiliation. Since Tang Zheng had rushed over, it was the perfect time for him to take his revenge. He grabbed out with his hand, and a surge of astral energy was firmly grasped in his palm. More and more star force gathered, and finally, it turned into a whip that was completely condensed out of star force. Whoosh! The long whip lashed across the sky, tearing the void and splitting the sky into two. Then, the whip fell in front of Tang Zheng. The air in front of him was immediately split into two as well. A majestic force covered the sky and earth, and it was exceptionally fierce. A soul-stirring pressure arose spontaneously, but Tang Zheng did not retreat. Instead, he became one with the hidden sword and pressed forward with an indomitable will. Poof! The hidden mystic sword landed on the whip, and the whip trembled a little, completely blocking the impact. The long whip took the opportunity to coil around the hidden sword, and a huge force seemed to want to break the hidden sword in half. One with the sword, I will destroy both you and the sword. Ji Wuxiang's angry voice came. The hidden sword seemed to be really about to break from the pressure. If the hidden sword broke into two pieces, Tang Zheng would be seriously injured even if he did not die. However, wang! A clear sound of the sword soared into the sky. It was like a clear sound that shook the world, sweeping away all demons and ghosts. Pa! The sword light illuminated the surroundings, and with a momentum that could cut through everything, it broke free from the long whip. The long whip broke, and at the same time, the storm seemed to be split into two by the hidden sword. The hidden sword stopped in midair, and Tang Zheng appeared. The power of the sword was not small, and the power of the whip was not weak either. In the strong confrontation, the hidden sword won and broke the long whip. However, Tang Zheng had no choice but to separate from the hidden sword and reappear. The storm was completely stopped because of the sword. Ji Wuxiang stood not far away, and looked at Tang Zheng. He could not hide the shock in his eyes. Your cultivation, how did it increase so much? Ji Wuxiang thought that after that battle, he learned from the painful experience, and with the help of the celestial chess, his cultivation increased by leaps and bounds, and had undergone a tremendous change. This was already a miracle. However, Tang Zheng's cultivation had also increased by leaps and bounds, and was not lower than his at all. In fact, it seemed that he had even surpassed him. One must know that the whip just now had borrowed the power of the celestial chess, and its power was even stronger than what he could use himself. However, Tang Zheng still broke it. Although there was a price, it was far lower than what Ji Wuxiang expected. How did you do it? Ji Wuxiang asked in a stern voice. Tang Zheng could not see through Ji Wuxiang's cultivation. Ever since he used the power of the stars to cultivate, Tang Zheng could not see through him. Once other martial artists absorbed the power of the stars, the cultivator could not see through the cultivation of the martial artist. In this way, both sides could not see through each other's cultivation. It was like a blind man touching an elephant, and could only know who was stronger and who was weaker after fighting. Humph, you think only you can become stronger, and others can only stay where they are? Tang Zheng asked with a cold smile. So what if I become stronger? You are already in my celestial chess, what else can you do? Ji Wuxiang asked disdainfully. Have you forgotten? I also understand the celestial chess. You stole a bit of knowledge of the celestial chess from me, and you dare to show off in front of me? You are the one who should not forget that the celestial chess was created by me. It is like my child, and everything about it was given by me. If I want it to change, it will naturally change. You don't really think that I would not consider you as a factor, right? Tang Zheng's eyes narrowed slightly, and he asked, what do you mean? I am not afraid to tell you directly, the celestial chess has already changed, and is not the celestial chess you know. Moreover, I have specially prepared a gift for you, Ji Wuxiang said maliciously, the ruthlessness in his eyes growing stronger and stronger. Tang Zheng's head trembled. Ji Wuxiang was really cunning and farsighted. After thinking so much, he had actually specially prepared a gift for him. This gift was naturally a trap. However, he was skilled and daring, and was not afraid. Instead, he held his sword with one hand and walked on air as if he was walking on flat ground, walking step by step towards Ji Wuxiang. I want to see what you have prepared for me, he said casually. Chapter 1557. The storm rose again, and it was even more violent than before. It covered the sky and completely enveloped Tang Zheng. Every step Tang Zheng took seemed to be extremely heavy, but even so, his pace did not slow down in the slightest. He was extremely steady. Swish! Sword light rose, and heaven and earth merged. Tang Zheng knew very well how powerful Ji Wuxiang's attack was, so he did not dare to be sloppy and directly used his most powerful move, heaven and earth merging. The power of this move when he fought against Hao Tianwang was still fresh in Tang Zheng's memory. Practice makes perfect. When his sword light rose, heaven and earth changed color. The storm and the surroundings became more violent and turbulent, layer upon layer, and the power of each layer quickly superimposed. At the same time, the skies seemed to be pulled down, and a terrifying pressure was exerted. The yin-yang fish also appeared in the sky and on the ground. They moved up and down, and quickly closed together, making this pressure even more terrifying. The storm was completely enveloped by the yin-yang fish, and even Ji Wuxiang could not stay out of it. He looked up, and then looked down again. His eyes were as deep as water, and he thought to himself, this brat's strength has really reached the peak. He's actually so powerful. Heavenly chess, break! Ji Wuxiang roared. Above the 9 heavens, in the land beyond the heavens, the stars kept flickering, and the power of the stars rapidly descended. Thousands upon thousands of them fell like a meteor shower. The heavenly chest was immediately infused with a vast amount of star power. The windstorm grew rapidly with an unstoppable momentum, blocking the yin-yang fish that were closing in. The yin-yang fish actually retreated. Tang Zheng's expression darkened. He did not expect the heavenly chest to change so much that it could actually withstand the attack of heaven and earth merging. Ha ha ha, Tang Zheng, you overestimate yourself. You dare to embarrass yourself in front of me with this little trick? You're asking to be humiliated. Ji Wuxiang was exultant, and he could not stop laughing. Tang Zheng did not say a word. He deeply felt the power of the stars, and also found the problem. All of this was caused by the stars. Without the power of the stars, the power of the heavenly chess would be greatly reduced. Then I'll make your star force vanish. Tang Zheng urged his power and quickly absorbed the power of the stars. The vast and mighty power of the stars seemed to have found an outlet, and all of a sudden, it converged towards him from all directions. Every pore on his body was stretched to the maximum. The power of the stars was rapidly accumulating in his body, and he didn't have time to convert it into true qi. Soon, his body reached a state of saturation. He was unable to continue absorbing the power of the stars. Ha ha ha, I know you can absorb the power of the stars, so I'll let you absorb as much as you want. Continue, see if I'll be worried. Ji Wuxiang said proudly, as if he had already expected Tang Zheng to do this. Tang Zheng became very passive. He had no way to absorb the power of the stars, but the sky was still constantly replenishing the power of the stars. The storm was getting bigger and bigger, and it was spinning faster and faster. Tang Zheng was in the middle of it, and he could already feel the terrifying power of the storm. Even if I can't absorb it, don't I still have the swallowing heaven technique? The heavenly realm is another world. I'll let you absorb as much power of the stars as you have. Tang Zheng's eyes turned, and he stretched out his left hand. A black hole appeared in his palm, and it kept growing bigger. Then, it flew out of his hand and floated in the air. Immediately, all the power of the stars in the world converged towards the black hole at an incomparable speed. It was not at the speed that Tang Zheng could absorb by himself. This speed was even faster than the power of the stars falling from the sky. The consumption was greater than the replenishment, and the power of the stars was decreasing bit by bit. Ji Wuxiang's smile froze. He didn't expect the situation to change so quickly, and the slap to his face so timely. Before he could react, the balance had changed. The yin and yang fish once again closed in on each other bit by bit. The terrifying pressure acted on his body, and he felt like his waist was about to be crushed. Close. Tang Zheng looked at this scene, and his heart was set. He roared loudly, and the yin and yang fish's speed suddenly increased, and it quickly closed. Boom! The storm was squeezed into the yin and yang fish. Ji Wuxiang hurriedly retreated at the last moment, and dodged this attack. It was like heaven and earth were merging, and the pressure was unimaginable. Therefore, the storm disappeared as if it had never appeared, and the yin and yang fish began to spin in the sky. However, bang! A loud explosion burst out from the yin and yang fish. The yin and yang fish completely exploded, turning into countless rays of light that scattered across the sky. Obviously, the power of the storm was too strong, and the yin and yang fish could not be suppressed. In the end, the two forces collided and exploded, and both died, vanishing into thin air. Ji Wuxiang retreated far away. His face was pale and he did not look good. From afar, he looked at Tang Zheng proudly standing in the sky. The thousands of feelings in his heart were indescribable. Tang Zheng's mind was shaken. He had won this attack, but the consumption was huge. There was no more spiritual energy in this world. If it was anyone else, even if they had Tang Zheng's cultivation, after this battle, they would be powerless and would be doomed. However, Tang Zheng was different. He could absorb the power of the stars, so he did not have to worry about this problem. In a few breaths, he recovered and was eager to try again. In the explosion, the black hole was also affected and disappeared. However, Tang Zheng's harvest was not small. There was already a large amount of power of the stars in the heaven realm. If he relied on his own strength to absorb the power of the stars from the 9 heavens, he would definitely not be able to do this, nor would he be able to do it so quickly. On the contrary, Ji Wuxiang had helped him a lot. Ji Wuxiang was not clear about the matters of the heaven realm, but he knew that the black hole was the heaven-swallowing technique. He was very fond of it. Wasn't the heaven-swallowing technique useless? Back then, even the people of the demon race were not willing to cultivate it. Why was it that in Tang Zheng's hands, it could actually produce such a huge power? Of course, he was not clear about the reason. Other than Tang Zheng, no one else knew. Tang Zheng looked at Ji Wuxiang from afar. Although the heavenly chess had changed, and he could not use the rules and loopholes of the heavenly chess to counterattack and dodge, even if he faced it head-on, he could still withstand it. Ji Wuxiang, what other moves do you have? Use them all. Tang Zheng said as he approached. Ji Wuxiang's expression kept changing. He gritted his teeth and said, "Do you think it will be so easy to win? You think too simply." After pausing for a moment, he took a deep breath. Like a muffled thunder, he roared, "Kill him!" Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Figures rose from the ground one after another. They were all warriors. They were densely packed like locusts, covering the sky and covering the sun. Tang Zheng was very curious as to where Ji Wuxiang had found so many martial artists that he could not kill them all. The warriors flew between Tang Zheng and Ji Wuxiang, forming a human wall, blocking Tang Zheng's path. Chapter 1558. The 4 symbols and the Azura had both turned into the height of an ordinary person. They did not look as scary as before, but their auras were completely different from the martial warriors in front of them. To read this book, please go to $cotton_flower_sugar_. _small_. Tang Zheng pointed at the densely packed martial warriors and said indifferently, "I'll leave them to the 2 of you. Master, don't worry. I won't let them hinder you." The 4 symbols said solemnly. The Shura did not say anything at all. He grinned, but no matter how one looked at it, his smile was sinister, causing one's hair to stand on end. Shwa. When the Azura blade appeared, the Azura did not even need Tang Zheng's instructions and rushed out first. Although most of his evil aura had been purified by the Ksitigarbha scripture, he was still born of evil aura, so there was still an evil aura hidden in the depths of his heart. Now that he was released, he couldn't wait to start a massacre in all directions and fight to his heart's content. Wang. The Azura blade started to tremble, continuously glowing, as if it was cheering as if it was about to drink blood. The 4 symbols was not willing to fall behind. With a leap, they pounced into the midst of the martial warriors. Ping, ping, pang. The sky was filled with weapons, but the 4 symbols acted as if they did not see them. They allowed the weapons to hit them, but all of them returned empty-handed, not even breaking their skin. The original body of the 4 symbols was a divine-level stone, which was not the slightest bit inferior to Tang Zheng's chaotic Vajra spell when it was cultivated to the extreme, so how could they be afraid of these weapons? No matter how sharp they would only suffer a loss. The Azura glanced at the 4 symbols, as if he was aware of the competition. The Azura blade in his hand danced even faster, leaving no gaps. Wherever it passed, the martial warriors would die. The Azura blade was filled with Yin Qi. Once the Yin Qi entered the body, it would cause fatal injuries. Some of these martial warriors did not seem to have died immediately, but what awaited them was an even more painful process. Although the Azura and the 4 symbols could not absorb the power of the stars to continuously replenish their power, with their strength, they could definitely hold on for a long time. The attacks of these martial warriors were not as ferocious as those of Ji Wuxiang, which could consume too much of their power. Tang Zheng no longer cared about the fierce battle, and directly walked through the crowd. Seeing this, the martial warriors all rushed over, but before they could get close to Tang Zheng, they were all killed by the four symbols and Azura. It was as if Tang Zheng had entered an uninhabited land as he easily passed through the human wall. His eyes suddenly lit up as the space around him became spacious. However, Ji Wuxiang had already disappeared. Tang Zheng frowned. Did Ji Wuxiang escape? That was not his style. This was Ji Wuxiang's last bargaining chip. If he escaped like this, then once Tang Zheng destroyed this place, it would be very difficult for him to have a chance to make a comeback. Therefore, Ji Wuxiang would definitely fight with all his might, even at the risk of sacrificing his own life. Gradually, Tang Zheng's gaze fell on the towering Mount Buzhou in the distance. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Ji Wuxiang had escaped to Mount Buzhou? No matter what, he would not allow Ji Wuxiang to escape like this. Therefore, he chased after him. Mount Buzhou did not seem to have changed much. Pure white snow covered it, and it was still as tall as before. There was no concealing a ray at the top of the mountain. At a glance, it seemed to be connected to the heavens. What is Ji Wuxiang's intention for escaping to this place? Tang Zheng did not think that Ji Wuxiang was escaping randomly. He definitely had a motive. No matter what the other party's motive was, he could only go up the mountain first. Stepping on the somersault cloud, he quickly rose into the sky. There seemed to be no trace of martial warriors on Mount Buzhou. In fact, there was not even a shadow of a person. Tang Zheng looked along the way. Other than white snow, there was only white snow. Ji Wuxiang, where exactly are you hiding? Tang Zheng's eyes were like those of a hawk. He did not miss a single detail. The battle in the distance was getting more and more intense. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The white snow on Mount Buzhou shook incessantly and fell with a crash. It was as though an avalanche was about to happen. Whoosh! The white snow on a cliff really fell. Then, it caused the white snow below to change rapidly like a rolling snowball. Then, an avalanche came. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Layers of white snow rolled rapidly. Mount Buzhou seemed to be shaking more violently. Back then, Tang Zheng mystique used to move mountains and moved Mount Buzhou a distance away to avoid the danger of Mount Buzhou collapsing. Moreover, Mount Buzhou was a sacred mountain. It had a guardian spirit. The guardian spirit had once given Tang Zheng god power to repel the dragon slayer. Therefore, when he did not see Ji Wuxiang, he tried to communicate with the guardian spirit of Mount Buzhou. It was the guardian spirit of this mountain. It knew everything on the mountain like the back of its hand. It definitely knew where Ji Wuxiang was hiding. However, there was no response at all. It was as if Mount Buzhou was a dead object. How can this be? Back then, when Mount Buzhou's foundation was damaged, the guardian spirit could communicate with me and even gave me god power. Why is it that now that Mount Buzhou is undamaged, the guardian spirit has no reaction at all? Tang Zheng was shocked. He looked around but did not find any clues. Ji Wuxiang. It must be his doing. What did he do to Mount Buzhou to make the guardian spirit of Mount Buzhou disappear? Tang Zheng's heart gradually sank. He also became cautious. Whoosh! Suddenly, a huge rock flew over from nowhere and smashed straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng quickly dodged. The huge rock landed on the ground at the foot of the mountain, smashing a hole the size of a football field. Hiss! He sucked in a cold breath. Where did this attack come from? He actually did not find any clues. Moreover, this attack was so strong that it shocked him greatly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. More than 10 huge rocks flew over from above. They were like meteorites from outer space. As they rubbed against the air, sparks flew. The huge rocks came unexpectedly. The somersault cloud quickly dodged while Tang Zheng wielded the hidden sword. The sword light danced and split a few huge rocks. However, his palms were sweating. The huge vibration was too strong. The huge rocks came from the mountain. Could it be that Ji Wuxiang is really hiding at the peak? Tang Zheng finally saw the clues and shouted, "Somersault cloud, fly up." Whoosh! The somersault cloud became extremely agile. It quickly dodged and gradually flew up the mountain peak. Finally, he saw his target, Ji Wuxiang. He was really standing at the peak of the mountain, looking extremely carefree. He looked at Tang Zheng with satisfaction. It was as if he was not afraid of him at all. He had also forgotten about his failure just now. Ji Wuxiang, you really are here. Now you have no way out. Let's see how you can escape. Tang Zheng said with a murderous look. Ji Wuxiang Tang Zheng laughed loudly. Tang Zheng, you really think you can kill me? You overestimate yourself and underestimate me. Humph, what other skills do you have? Take them all out. I want to see what other tricks you have. Tang Zheng said disdainfully. The heavenly chess was Ji Wuxiang's trump card. However, Tang Zheng could not guess what other tricks Ji Wuxiang could play with the heavenly chess. You want to see my trump card? Then I'll show it to you. As soon as Ji Wuxiang's voice faded away, a rumbling sound was heard. Mount Buzhou began to tremble. The pure white snow completely fell off, revealing the dark and hard rocks underneath. To download the latest TXT ebook, please click to read this book on mobile to comment. Chapter 1559. The pure white snow on Mount Buzhou slid down. It was as if Mount Buzhou had taken off its outer layer, revealing its true appearance. The entire mountain was made up of pitch-black rocks of strange shapes. The rocks were either ferocious, strange, or heavy. Rumble. Mount Buzhou was still shaking. Ji Wuxiang stood at the top of the mountain, high and mighty, looking insufferably arrogant. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have realized something strange. The guardian spirit of Mount Buzhou had lost contact. Could it be related to Ji Wuxiang? The commotion of Mount Buzhou was too great. It was probably related to Ji Wuxiang. Tang Zheng, it's not just about whether you can withstand the attack of Mount Buzhou. Ji Wuxiang asked proudly. As soon as his voice fell, a deafening sound came from Mount Buzhou. Then, Mount Buzhou rose from the ground. Mount Buzhou quickly became taller. The pitch-black rocks moved and turned into a stone giant in an instant. This was a real giant, standing between the heavens and the earth. His head seemed to really touch the blue dome of heaven. Ji Wuxiang stood on its head like a god looking down on the world. Tang Zheng looked very weak in front of this giant. He was like an ant. At this moment, Tang Zheng was an ant in Ji Wuxiang's eyes. An ant that he could crush at will. Ji Wuxiang was fearless. With Mount Buzhou as his last resort, did he still need to be afraid of Tang Zheng? The answer was of course no. Tang Zheng's heart was filled with shock as he finally understood why Ji Wuxiang was so fearless. Looking at the indomitable giant, his heart couldn't calm down for a long time, and even his breathing became hurried. Mount Buzhou had fallen into Ji Wuxiang's control. This was one of the important reasons why he had deliberately set up the celestial chess in the 100,000 mountains. He had set his eyes on Mount Buzhou. Tang Zheng, what do you think of my reliance? Ji Wuxiang boasted proudly. Tang Zheng's expression darkened. The somersault cloud quickly rose to the same height as Ji Wuxiang. Ji Wuxiang, Mount Buzhou is a divine mountain. Do you think you can control it so easily? Of course I know it's a divine mountain. I've looked up countless information and found out that Mount Buzhou was a mountain peak left behind when the world was created. Its magic is unimaginable. But so what? It's still controlled by my celestial chess. Now it's become my tool. Haha. Ji Wuxiang laughed maniacally. He had the right to be so arrogant. The celestial chess he had created was simply too miraculous. During this time, he set up the celestial chess around Mount Buzhou. Dianan and the 100,000 mountains became a huge chessboard. In the end, the mighty power of the stars fell on Mount Buzhou. It constantly suppressed the divinity of Mount Buzhou. Mount Buzhou's divinity was suppressed and its guardian spirit fell silent. Mount Buzhou was completely controlled by the power of the stars and fell into Ji Wuxiang's hands. He didn't expect that his improved celestial chess was still not Tang Zheng's match. He had no choice but to use Mount Buzhou at this critical moment. He believed that if he had more time, he would be able to control Mount Buzhou better and not leave any flaws. However, things didn't go as he planned. He had no choice but to use Mount Buzhou. Die, Tang Zheng! Ji Wuxiang roared. Mount Buzhou moved. The huge foot made of rocks suddenly lifted and kicked at Tang Zheng. A vast and mighty power surged out. Tang Zheng immediately recognized that this was the fusion of the god power of the Buzhou mountain and the power of the stars. The power was extremely terrifying. Sure enough, he felt as if he had sunk into the sea. The air around him had undergone an earth-shattering change, and his body actually showed signs of being imprisoned. You want to defeat me like this? Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows. Xuanzang burst out with a bright light and wrapped him up in an instant. A giant sword gradually appeared. It crossed the sky as if it could pierce through the dome of heaven. The giant sword was too big. It was the biggest sword Tang Zheng had ever used. It was hundreds of meters long and was completely covered by the sword light. The sun in the sky was covered by the sword light. The people fighting in the distance were all affected. They subconsciously blocked with their hands. The sword light was like small sharp swords. If they didn't block it, they would be doomed. Suddenly, a few screams sounded. A few cultivators fell from the sky and were crushed to pieces. They were injured by the sword light. They were thousands of meters away, but they couldn't escape. It was clear how powerful the sword light was. The air near the sword light was completely fragmented. The atmosphere was chaotic, as if a storm was about to arise. Hum. The sound of the sword rang through the sky. Then, the sword light moved and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Such a huge sword light naturally wouldn't disappear into thin air. Instead, it flew out at an extremely fast speed. It fell from the sky and slashed at the giant's leg. Tang Zheng didn't show any mercy. In such an earth-shattering battle, showing mercy would be handing one's life to the enemy. He wouldn't do such a stupid thing. He activated all the unrefined power of the stars in his body and covered the hidden sword. Then, he and the sword became one and intertwined to form a giant sword that crossed the sky. Whoosh! It was cut in half. A long black strip appeared in the void. It seemed that the space door was about to be cut open by the sword. Boom! The hidden sword slashed at the giant's leg. In an instant, the giant shook violently. A terrifying force rebounded from his leg. The hidden sword rose to the sky. The giant's leg fell back to the ground. Boom! It was earth-shattering. The ground cracked inch by inch under the giant's foot. It became riddled with holes. A huge pit formed under its foot. Whoosh! However, Mount Buzhou was far more powerful than that. So, in the next second, Mount Buzhou's fist came again. It was like a meteorite falling from the sky and smashed at the hidden sword. Clang! The hidden sword shook violently and flew to the ground. It went straight into the ground. And there was a person lying on the ground, Tang Zheng. Mount Buzhou's attack broke his state of being one with the hidden sword. Ji Wuxiang laughed arrogantly. Tang Zheng, stand up and fight. The show has just begun. Why did you fall? Tang Zheng climbed up with his hands on the ground. He didn't even look up at Ji Wuxiang. Instead, he stretched out his 5 fingers. Boom! 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 The mountain shook as if there was an earthquake. Mount Buzhou couldn't stand still. It swayed as if it was swaying in the wind. Ji Wuxiang hurriedly stabilized his mind and body as he stared at Tang Zheng. The earth and rocks on the ground flew up into the air bit by bit. In an instant, the sky and earth turned gray. The ground under Tang Zheng's feet cracked. A ray of light penetrated through the crack. It was extremely sharp. The light flashed and flew into Tang Zheng's hand. Chapter 1560. The Ksitigarbha Sutra began to circulate on its own as a layer of golden light appeared on his body. The golden light gradually covered his entire body and intertwined into a golden kasaya. Ji Wuxiang was stunned. He didn't know about the Ksitigarbha Sutra, but he could clearly feel the change in Tang Zheng's aura. He seemed to have become stronger. Tang Zheng silently chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra, and Sanskrit chants descended from the sky. These Sanskrit chants didn't come from Tang Zheng's mouth, but reverberated in the natural world. It was as if heaven and earth had some kind of mysterious resonance with Tang Zheng, resulting in this change. What is this? Ji Wuxiang's expression turned cold as he asked loudly. Tang Zheng rarely used the Ksitigarbha Sutra in the human world, because the Ksitigarbha Sutra was more used to intimidate and convert ghosts. However, there was no doubt that the Ksitigarbha Sutra also had a very strong offensive ability. Otherwise, how could the Dizang of Goguryeo rely on the Ksitigarbha Sutra to rule the ghost world? A lotus flower appeared with every step, and this lotus flower didn't disappear. Wherever Tang Zheng passed, the lotus flowers connected, forming a staircase that extended all the way to midair. The Ksitigarbha Sutra. Tang Zheng said lightly. What the hell is that? Ji Wuxiang didn't know much about the ghost world, so naturally he didn't know the power of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. I don't care what sutra you are. Under the divine power of Mount Buzhou, everything is in vain, only ashes can be scattered. Ji Wuxiang coldly snorted. Mount Buzhou once again raised its giant foot and stepped towards Tang Zheng, who was in midair. Hua! With a flash of golden light, the golden kasaya on Tang Zheng's body flew out, growing bigger and bigger until it covered the sky, flying towards the giant foot. The giant foot seemed to be stepping on clouds as it ruthlessly stepped on the kasaya. However, the kasaya didn't break. It only trembled a few times before it stabilized in midair. Tang Zheng's every step was like a lotus flower as he soared into the sky. With the sword in his hand, he looked like a handsome tree in the wind. He pinched a sword sign and the sword of hidden darkness once again flew out, directly slashing towards Ji Wuxiang, who was on top of the giant's head. Ji Wuxiang's expression suddenly changed as he cried out in surprise. The golden kasaya had actually blocked the attack of Mount Buzhou, allowing Tang Zheng to have the energy to attack him. Sword, come! Ji Wuxiang roared as a ray of light descended from the 9 heavens. This was the power of countless stars converging together to form a sword. But this sword was like a real thing, held in Ji Wuxiang's hand, and then chopped down from the sky, coincidentally colliding with the rapidly approaching Xuanzang's sword. Clang! The two swords clashed, and only this sound was left in the world. Many people who were slightly weaker were directly knocked unconscious and fell down. Tang Zheng's mind shook, but he immediately calmed down. Without a doubt, Ji Wuxiang's use of the power of the stars had reached the peak, surpassing Tang Zheng's. Tang Zheng knew that he couldn't do this, but he had the sword of hidden darkness, which was not inferior to Ji Wuxiang's sword in the slightest. Clang! Ding dang! The two swords went back and forth in mid-air, fighting happily. Their auras fluctuated, and the wind and clouds changed color. Unknowingly, a black cloud had gathered in the sky, and the world darkened. Crack! A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, and a heavy downpour poured down. The rain kept hitting Mount Buzhou, but it couldn't get close to Ji Wuxiang and Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng had already flown to the peak of Mount Buzhou, but the divine power of Mount Buzhou kept him at the door. He couldn't step on the peak, and could only hover in midair. A huge golden lotus spun incessantly beneath his feet, lifting him up. Ha ha ha, Tang Zheng, what can you do to me? Eat my sword. Seeing that Tang Zheng was already in front of him, Ji Wuxiang laughed wildly, and the sword in his hand flew out, slashing straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng waved his hand, and the sword of hidden darkness flew back to his hand, and then he slashed down with all his might. This time, the sword of hidden darkness was connected to Tang Zheng, and its power was obviously stronger. When it landed on the sword of light, the sword of light was immediately shattered into pieces, and disappeared without a trace. Tang Zheng took advantage of the victory, and prepared to climb to the peak of Mount Buzhou to give Ji Wuxiang a fatal blow. However, Ji Wuxiang's fingers moved, and with a single point of his finger, the wind and clouds changed, and the rain on the mountain peak stopped. The air also froze, and everything became strange. In the next second, a surge of divine power shot out. Bang! Tang Zheng blocked with his sword, but he couldn't completely block the divine power, and flew down like a kite with a broken string. Boom! With a loud sound, the golden Kasaya was affected by Tang Zheng, and couldn't withstand it. It was ruthlessly stomped into the ground by Mount Buzhou's huge foot, and exploded into pieces. Ha ha ha! Ji Wuxiang's wild laughter echoed between heaven and earth, and the rain continued to fall. Tang Zheng landed on the ground, his entire body drenched by the rain. He allowed the rain to splash on his face, and the surging power in his body made it impossible for him to immediately suppress it. He only felt that even breathing was a burning pain. Mount Buzhou's divine power is indeed extraordinary. He had once received the blessing of divine power, and could actually force the dragon slayer to retreat, so he had a deep understanding of the power of divine power. At this moment, the divine power fell into Ji Wuxiang's hands, and he really couldn't kill Ji Wuxiang. But he had no way out, and if he didn't take this opportunity to kill Ji Wuxiang, then when he counterattacked, he would be even stronger, and how could he deal with it? I'll deal with him. Suddenly, an angry roar sounded, and a cloud of black gas flew over from afar, eerie and terrifying. When it arrived in front of Mount Buzhou, the black gas transformed into Azura. Roar! Azura roared into the sky, and the billowing Yin energy spread in all directions. The ground under his feet was immediately infiltrated by the Yin energy, and turned pitch black. The Yin energy wreaked havoc, and wherever it passed, the grass withered, and not a single blade of grass grew. Azura's body also expanded, and in a short while, he grew to the height of Mount Buzhou, holding the Azura saber in his hand, looking ferocious and terrifying. Seeing how powerful Ji Wuxiang was, the warriors left the four symbols to deal with, and Azura completely broke out of his ferocious nature, and came to help Tang Zheng. Azura, be careful. Tang Zheng warned loudly. Azura didn't say a word, and raised the Azura saber to attack. Clang! The Azura saber fell on Mount Buzhou, but there were no sparks. It was like a clay ox entering the sea, and there wasn't much effect. Huh! Azura was stunned, as if he didn't expect that his Azura saber couldn't hurt Mount Buzhou. Seeing this, Ji Wuxiang laughed complacently. Mount Buzhou is a divine mountain, protected by divine power. It's not something you can hurt as you wish, wishful thinking. Azura coldly snorted, and his eyes locked onto Ji Wuxiang. He flew up, and this time, the Azura saber slashed directly at Ji Wuxiang. Clang! The divine power rebounded, and the Azura saber flew out of Azura's hand. This was a rare occurrence, and the Azura saber and Azura were one, but it still flew out. Tang Zheng, I'll deal with your follower first. Ji Wuxiang roared, and Mount Buzhou attacked Azura with both hands and feet. Azura gave up on the Azura saber, and with his tall body, he tangled with Mount Buzhou. Chapter 1561. The battle between Azura and Mount Buzhou was earth-shattering. Mortals couldn't get close to it. With a stomp, the ground cracked. Bottomless fissures spread across the ground. With a punch, the rainwater seemed to be pulled apart by a string. The rainwater in the sky couldn't fall. The pits and ditches on the ground were filled with rainwater, turning into lakes and rivers. The mountains and rivers changed. The landscape changed drastically. Tang Zheng and Ji Wuxiang watched the battle with surging emotions. Even the martial artists in the distance who saw this scene were so frightened that they lost their minds and fell from the sky. The four divisions, on the other hand, were unaffected. Their fists landed on the bodies of the martial artists, killing them instantly. Finally, the warriors were either dead or injured. There was no one left in the sky. The four symbols hurriedly rushed towards Mount Buzhou. With every step he took, his body grew taller and taller. As he grew taller, the soil on the ground converged towards him. When he walked to the front of Mount Buzhou, he also turned into an indomitable giant. Ji Wuxiang's pupils shrank when he saw this. He was shocked that Tang Zheng had two such powerful helpers. Originally, he was full of confidence, but now, his face became gloomy. Mount Buzhou, kill them. Boom! Mount Buzhou's attack became even more ferocious. His fist penetrated Azura's chest. However, Azura sneered. You want to kill me just like that? Boom! Azura's fist also landed on Mount Buzhou. Mount Buzhou shook rapidly. Ji Wuxiang almost lost his footing. Azura was formed by Yin Qi and could change at will. If this attack didn't hurt his foundation. However, the serious look in Tang Zheng's eyes became more and more intense. Because he saw Azura's condition. The world was completely covered by the power of the stars. There was no Yin Qi or spiritual Qi of heaven and earth. After a tough battle, Azura was exhausted and couldn't continue. As expected, Mount Buzhou only shook a few times. The storm-like fists passed through layers of rain and landed on Azura. Boom! The Azura couldn't resist and fell to the ground with a loud bang. Streams of Yin energy splashed out as his body rapidly shrank. Does that mean I can kill you now? Ji Wuxiang said fiercely. Whoosh! One of Mount Buzhou's legs left the ground and landed heavily on the Azura. Boom! With a loud noise, the four elephants rushed over and struck Mount Buzhou's waist with a punch. Mount Buzhou quickly moved backward and slid out a long ditch on the ground. The rain became heavier and filled up the ditch in an instant, turning it into a river. Another one who doesn't fear death. I'll deal with you first. Ji Wuxiang said fiercely. Mount Buzhou ran up, and with a boom, the earth trembled. In the blink of an eye, Mount Buzhou's enormous body rushed in front of the four symbols. Bang bang bang. Every punch landed on flesh, and the sound of impact was like thunder. As the two sides fought, the raindrops flew in all directions. When they landed on the ground, they were like cannonballs, creating craters. The place had turned into a mess. Azura, come back. Tang Zheng saw that the Azura's Yin Qi was already dissipating, and immediately stopped him from rushing forward. I can still fight. The Azura said stubbornly. No, come back. Tang Zheng ordered. With a thought, the Azura returned to Sumer world. Tang Zheng soared into the sky, once again raising his hidden profound sword. He fought side by side with the four symbols, attacking Mount Buzhou together. The sky darkened. This battle lasted from day to night. When the sky brightened again, it lasted from night to day. There seemed to be no end to it. The rain in the sky continued to fall. The prehistoric heavenly tomb had already been completely destroyed. In fact, the range of their battle had already expanded to other regions of the 10,000 huge mountains. Countless mountain peaks were broken in half. Countless rivers changed their course as a result. Countless large trees disappeared. The few of them did not seem to be tired at all. Ji Wuxiang and Tang Zheng could absorb the power of the stars to replenish their strength. Mount Buzhou and the four symbols did not need to absorb the power of the stars. When their feet landed on the ground, all the power in the earth vein would gather towards them. The rocks and soil outside the four symbols' body were constantly flying under the fists. Not long after, they dissipated, revealing his body. But very quickly, other rocks and soil continued to gather, replenishing his consumption. As for his main body, even in such an intense battle, he was not injured. Similarly, Mount Buzhou's main body was not injured either. Those black rocks possessed divine power and could not be harmed at all. Tang Jing gradually saw through the clues. Mount Buzhou and the four symbols were all pitch black, and their composition seemed to be very similar. They were all rocks that possessed some kind of divine power. Ji Wuxiang also noticed this, and his gaze aggressively lingered on the four symbols. The four symbols were created from a piece of rock left over from the creation of this world. Could it be that they had some kind of connection or origin with Mount Buzhou? Tang Jing thought of this point, but Ji Wuxiang did not know the details. He was so anxious that he almost stomped his feet when he saw that Mount Buzhou, whom he had placed his hopes on, could not destroy the four symbols. Mount Buzhou, you possess divine power. How can you only have this little ability? Ji Wuxiang said fiercely. Tang Zhang's eyes gradually lit up. For symbols, aren't you one with the Tianxia mountain range? Merge with Mount Buzhou and awaken its guardian spirit. Understood. The four symbols seemed to have been stripped of his bones. Seeing Mount Buzhou's fist coming at him, he simply gave up on resisting. The moment the fist struck his chest, he wrapped his hands around Mount Buzhou's fist. A mysterious power surged out, and the air seemed to have stopped. Mount Buzhou and the four symbols were both fixed in place, their bodies releasing a black light at the same time. Ji Wuxiang saw this abnormal scene and immediately realized that the situation was bad. He shouted, "Mount Buzhou, destroy him for me." Mount Buzhou turned a deaf ear to him. The black light on his body became more and more intense, rushing into the sky. This part of the sky seemed to have turned black. Even the rain could not penetrate this layer of black light. Bang! For some reason, Ji Wuxiang actually flew out from the top of Mount Buzhou's head. Ah, how can this be? Ji Wuxiang couldn't help but cry out in alarm in midair. Tang Zhang's eyes trembled when he saw this scene. He realized that Ji Wuxiang had been sent flying by Mount Buzhou's divine power. Mount Buzhou's divine power was actually fighting against Ji Wuxiang. What did this mean? The four symbols had taken effect. Tang Zhang slapped his head. He had only just realized this after fighting for so long. He really couldn't see Mount Tai. He impatiently asked, "For symbols, how is it?" The four symbols didn't answer him. His body was shrinking, and the mountain rocks and soil that had been sucked over fell off one by one, revealing his true body. Mount Buzhou's fist seemed to have become one with his body. That fist was actually melting bit by bit. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1562. Mount Buzhou's fist had already disappeared, becoming one with the four symbols. Tang Zhang and Ji Wuxiang both looked at this strange scene, not daring to act blindly without thinking. Although Ji Wuxiang realized that the situation was not good, he was not in a hurry to leave. Mount Buzhou was his last support. If he left, then he would not have the chance to turn things around. Therefore, no matter what, he had to make a final struggle. The black light became more and more intense. In the end, the figures of the four symbols and Mount Buzhou could no longer be seen clearly, only a ball of pitch black light. This black light traversed heaven and earth, causing people's hearts to tremble. Tang Jing did not want to continue watching like this. No matter what the final result was, he had to deal with Ji Wuxiang first. When Ji Wuxiang saw Tang Jing flying over, he quickly retreated. He already knew that he had no support. He was no match for Tang Jing, so he naturally did not dare to face him head-on. However, how could Tang Jing let him do as he wished? Sword light flashed, blocking his path. Ji Wuxiang, where do you think you're going? Ji Wuxiang concealed his panicked expression, saying, "Who wants to escape?" "Humph, is your little four symbols a match for Mount Buzhou?" Laughable. Whether or not they are a match, won't we know the answer in a while? Let's take this opportunity to settle our accounts. Tang Zheng said with a cold smile. I have the celestial chess in my hands. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Ji Wuxiang shouted loudly. He could not bear to lose momentum. his large hand reached into the sky. With a whoosh, a light sword once again descended from the sky. The light sword, condensed from the power of the stars, once again appeared in the palm of his hand. He stared at Tang Jing with bright eyes, saying, "Then I'll let you have a taste of the power of the celestial chess." Whoosh! With a flash of sword light, streaks of sword light spread out in all directions like streaks of lightning. With Ji Wuxiang as the center, they danced in an irregular pattern. This part of the world was completely cut into countless pieces by the sword light. Not only the earth, but even the air was no longer whole. As for the clouds in the sky, they were scattered. The rain stopped abruptly and completely disappeared. Tang Zheng let out a long breath of turbid air, raised the hidden mysterious sword, and roared. Heaven and earth merged. A beam of sword light flew towards the 9 heavens while another beam of sword light landed on the earth. They transformed into yin and yang fishes before merging from the heaven and earth. Bang bang bang. Everywhere the yin-yang fish passed, it collided with the countless strands of sword light, creating intense sparks. The sparks were incomparably dazzling, covering the sky as if there were countless resplendent suns in the sky. Time ticked by. Boom! A beam of light, with the 2 people as the center, quickly spread out in all directions. Everywhere it passed, the mountains were destroyed, the grass and trees turned to ash. Everything was razed to the ground. The world suddenly quieted down, as if it was dead silent. There was not the slightest sound. The light did not disappear for a long time. Suddenly, bang! A sound broke the silence. The light was like a pebble falling into the surface of a lake. It rippled and then shattered. Everything became clear again. A flat plain appeared in front of them. There was not a single rise or fall of mountains. The yellow soil had already been turned up from the ground. What entered their eyes was a barren land. A person was lying on the ground, mud splashed all over his body. He looked up at the sky, his eyes flashing with disbelief and despair. He saw a figure lightly floating down from the sky, slowly growing bigger in his eyes. Tang Zheng, Ji Wuxiang shouted with difficulty. This voice was squeezed out from the depths of his throat, revealing countless complex emotions. How can I lose to you? Tang Zheng landed in front of Ji Wuxiang, looking at him calmly and said, Why can't you lose to me? But I already have the celestial chess. The celestial chess is very powerful, but is my strength that weak? Previously, you were only relying on Mount Buzhou to resist me. Without Mount Buzhou, you have no final support. You will naturally lose. Tang Zheng said calmly, his analysis was very thorough. Mount Buzhou. Ji Wuxiang looked around and saw Mount Buzhou. The light of Mount Buzhou had also completely dissipated. It was unknown when, but it had actually separated from the 4 symbols. The 4 symbols stood in front of Mount Buzhou. They seemed very small, but there was an additional aura on their bodies. This aura was exactly the same as Mount Buzhou. Ji Wuxiang stared straight at Mount Buzhou, his eyes burning with hope as he said, Mount Buzhou, Mount Buzhou. Obviously, he wanted to use Mount Buzhou to rise again. Ji Wuxiang could no longer stand up. He slowly climbed towards Mount Buzhou, the hope in his eyes burning brighter and brighter. Boom! Mount Buzhou moved its legs a bit. Ji Wuxiang wanted nothing more than to climb up. He stretched out his arms as if he wanted to touch Mount Buzhou. However, Mount Buzhou stopped. Mount Buzhou, why aren't you coming? Ji Wuxiang could no longer crawl and asked with difficulty. Tang Zheng looked at the 4 symbols and Mount Buzhou thoughtfully and said, Ji Wuxiang, Mount Buzhou naturally won't go to you. He is no longer under your control. Is that right, guardian spirit? Yes, he actually wants to control Mount Buzhou. What wishful thinking. A voice sounded. It was Mount Buzhou's guardian spirit. Ah. Who is speaking? Ji Wuxiang looked at Mount Buzhou in shock. Although he controlled Mount Buzhou, he didn't communicate with the guardian spirit. Naturally, he didn't hear his voice. I am Mount Buzhou's guardian spirit. You used the power of the stars to suppress me and control Mount Buzhou. You still dare to ask who I am? The guardian spirit angrily asked. Guardian spirit. Ji Wuxiang muttered in a daze. Mount Buzhou actually has a guardian spirit. Of course, Mount Buzhou is a divine mountain. Naturally, it has a guardian spirit. So what if it's a guardian spirit? It was still suppressed by the power of the stars. Ji Wuxiang said with a sinister expression. The guardian spirit said with shame, yes, I have to admit that the power of the stars is very strong. However, you never thought that there would be someone in this world who could help me escape from your suppression. You never thought that the four symbols and I were born from the same root. Born from the same root? Ji Wuxiang repeated in disbelief. Yes, we are both divine stones left behind when the world was created. I turned into Mount Buzhou and the four symbols were turned into statues. However, our origins are the same. The guardian spirit said. These words caused Ji Wuxiang to turn pale with fright. His entire body began to tremble. He had calculated everything, but he never considered this point. The four symbols, this one variable, had ruined his meticulous plan. Previously, Tang Zheng had already guessed a bit, but now that he heard the complete explanation, he couldn't suppress the shock in his heart. The four symbols in Mount Buzhou were actually formed from divine stones left behind when the world was created. Moreover, they each had their own divinity and function. The four symbols walked step by step in front of Ji Wuxiang and said condescendingly, Ji Wuxiang, you schemed, but in the end, you failed. This is your fate. However, I still have to thank you. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have known that there were others like me. Moreover, we met several times, but we never had the chance to recognize each other. Pooh. Chapter 1563. The four symbols' words and Buzhou Mountain's reaction completely extinguished Ji Wuxiang's last strand of hope, which was why his life was gradually fading away. Seeing this, Tang Zheng already understood that Ji Wuxiang was completely finished. Ji Wuxiang's gaze was still firmly locked onto Tang Zheng, unwillingness mixed with resentment as he said, Tang Zheng. I really didn't think that I would lose to you, and lose so thoroughly. Tang Zheng looked at him indifferently and said, there are many things that you didn't think of, your glory has already passed. Ji Wuxiang's mouth cracked open, his eyes turned as if he was sizing up his surroundings, and said, but you didn't think that the battle just now would have completely changed the 10,000 mountains. There is no more heaven and earth spirit chi here, only the power of the stars is left. From now on, the 10,000 mountains will be a forbidden area for cultivators, ha ha ha. A forbidden area for cultivators. Tang Zheng's head trembled, only now did he notice this point. Ji Wuxiang was not exaggerating, that battle just now was truly too earth-shattering. The heavenly chess drew in too much power of the stars above the 9 heavens, it was not something that a single person could digest. With so much power of the stars, it had already completely changed the 10,000 mountain structure. Even if Tang Zheng used the swallowing the heavens technique to absorb the power of the stars, he might not be able to absorb all of it in a short period of time. Ji Wuxiang, I can't help but admit that you are a genius, but you used your intelligence in the wrong place. Why do you insist on seeing cultivators as your enemy? Can't you coexist peacefully? Of course we can't coexist peacefully. Ji Wuxiang's eyes burned with the flames of hatred. It has already been decided hundreds of years ago. Cultivators and martial artists must become enemies. This is unreasonable. This is also the Azure Dragon Hall's principle. Tang Zheng shook his head. I will prove you wrong. Ha ha ha, let me tell you, that day will never come. The heavenly chess has already merged with this land. It will continuously draw in the power of the stars. This land will become a paradise for martial artists. Regarding the method for martial artists to absorb the power of stars, I have already made it public. The power of the stars is a higher level of existence than the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There will be a day when martial artists will completely surpass martial artists, and martial artists will be suppressed and eliminated, completely disappearing from the world. Tang Zheng's heart trembled as he resolutely said, I won't let this happen. But you can't stop it. You can't stop heavenly chess. Really? Although you have changed the celestial chess, I will figure it out. If I die, the secret of the heavenly chess will be brought to my grave by me. How can you change the heavenly chess? Ji Wuxiang said proudly, not taking his own death seriously. You want to take the secret of heavenly chess to your grave? Do you think it's that easy? Tang Zheng's expression turned vicious. He reached out his hand and Ji Wuxiang was sucked into Tang Zheng's hand. What are you doing? Ji Wuxiang suddenly had a bad premonition and turned pale with fright. Tang Zheng sneered and said, of course it's to dig out the secret of the heavenly chess. No, you can't do that. Ji Wuxiang immediately realized Tang Zheng's method. Soul-searching technique. Ji Wuxiang knew about this ability of the demon race, and it was used by Tang Zheng to the point of perfection. Just now, he only cared about venting the emotions in his heart and didn't think that ending his own life would be the most effective way to preserve the secret. However, he couldn't even end his own life now, because he had already fallen into Tang Zheng's hands. Tang Zheng's eyes exploded with a soul-stirring gaze as he shouted, soul-searching technique. The large hand had already covered Ji Wuxiang's head. Ji Wuxiang tried to struggle, but he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. How could he have the chance to struggle? His expression suddenly froze, as if he had been petrified. Then, in the next second, his face revealed a painful expression, and he began to twitch non-stop. Tang Zheng did not hold back. In any case, Ji Wuxiang would not be able to survive. Therefore, he crazily activated his power and used the sky-swallowing technique. This power was extremely terrifying. There were no after-effects at all. Instead, it directly took Ji Wuxiang's life. The life force in Ji Wuxiang's eyes dissipated bit by bit. His face quickly turned pale, and his pupils dilated. Finally, he stopped twitching and completely calmed down. At this moment, Ji Wuxiang had finished his life. It was brilliant, dazzling, and crazy. Tang Zheng released his hand, and the corpse fell limply to the ground. Tang Zheng's gaze became very complicated. He knew all of Ji Wuxiang's secrets, knew the history of the Azure Dragon Hall, and even knew the schemes of the Azure Dragon Hall's High Lord starting from Noob era. Of course, he also knew all of the secrets of the heavenly chess. From now on, his attainments in the heavenly chess would reach the peak of perfection, and even surpass Ji Wuxiang. Because he was a cultivator, his horizons were naturally different from Ji Wuxiang's. Therefore, he had fused his and Ji Wuxiang's understanding of the heavenly chess. Of course, he would have different gains. At the same time, Tang Zheng could not help but be convinced by Ji Wuxiang's intelligence and wisdom. This was truly an unprecedented genius. It was truly a huge tragedy for him to reach this step. Ji Wuxiang, you can rest in peace. Although you died in my hands, I will bring the celestial chess to greater heights, and let it truly benefit the world. Not only will it benefit cultivators, but it will also benefit cultivators. This can be considered your final contribution to the people of the world. In the future, people will remember you, not because of your sins, but because you created the heavenly chess. If Ji Wuxiang heard these words, who knew how he would feel? Tang Zheng raised his head and looked around. The dense power of the stars enveloped the 100,000 mountains. Moreover, the heavenly chess was still endlessly absorbing the power of the stars from the 9 heavens. Even if it was Tang Zheng who had comprehended the true essence of the heavenly chess, he could not stop all of this. This was a trap that Ji Wuxiang had laid down by exhausting his own life. From now on, this will be the paradise of all martial artists in the world. However, these martial artists will not see cultivators as their mortal enemies. I will change their views. Tang Zheng thought silently. It was not easy to do this. Because although Ji Wuxiang had died, he had left behind many people who were loyal to him and believed in his ideals. To change the views of these people was easier said than done. Ding Dang, Wu, and Li Xiaotian will play an important role in this operation. Tang Zheng had an idea. He was a cultivator, so he would be ostracized by many martial artists. They would even see him as their mortal enemy. But these people were different. They were originally martial artists with unlimited potential. Tang Zheng believed that they were up to the task. In fact, he had already seen through the open strife and the veiled struggle between these women. There were strong and weak among them, but he had no way to change this situation for the time being. But from now on, it would be different. These three people would share a lot of his burden. He believed that they would definitely enjoy it and do great things. Chapter 1564. The Creation of Heaven and Earth. Tang Zheng's thoughts were immediately pulled back as he looked at the four symbols in surprise. The four symbols nodded heavily. Yes, I didn't know the answer to the question you asked me before, but now I can answer you. Why? Tang Zheng looked deeply at the four symbols and Mount Buzhou as he asked thoughtfully. Master, I'm sure you've already guessed a thing or two. Indeed, this is related to Mount Buzhou. As I said just now, he and I were originally born from the same root, and we are both divine stones left behind when heaven and earth were created. Originally, we didn't know what happened when heaven and earth were created, but after we merged with each other, some vague memory fragments appeared. The four symbols said. Is this true? Tang Zheng was shocked. The four symbols nodded heavily as he looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes. Then tell me quickly what happened when heaven and earth were created. Tang Zheng urged. This involved the origin of the world and might give him a lot of new inspiration. At first, this world was just a piece of chaos. Suddenly, a ray of light streaked across and this piece of chaos exploded. The clear air rose and turned into the sky while the turbid air fell and turned into the earth. This was how this world was formed. However, this didn't last for long. The earth and sky kept moving closer to each other, as if there were signs of returning to the original state of chaos. The four symbols explained tirelessly. A ray of light suddenly rose from Mount Buzhou. These lights and shadows changed and actually gave birth to the scene described by the four symbols. Tang Zheng immediately looked at this changing scene dumbfoundedly as if he was watching a movie. He couldn't help but hold his breath. He hadn't felt this kind of emotion in a long time. Shock from the bottom of his heart. That ray of light split the chaos and the scene of the explosion made his heart tremble. Then, he saw the formation of heaven and earth. He didn't even blink for fear of missing a detail. Looking at the sky and earth slowly moving closer to each other, Tang Zheng's heart couldn't help but tighten. Could it be that the newly formed heaven and earth were really going to turn into chaos again? Wouldn't that be a waste of all their previous efforts? The four symbols also looked at the scene in the sky. Although he already knew what had happened, he was still deeply shocked when he saw this scene again. Heaven and earth were getting closer and closer to each other. Coincidentally, at this time, a divine stone flew in from the outer space and blocked the space between heaven and earth. This divine stone contained boundless divine power. Heaven and earth could no longer approach each other, and this state was forever maintained. With the passage of time, the heavens and earth gradually stabilized, and this world was truly formed. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the heaven and earth were actually formed in this way. The divine stone was obviously taller than Mount Buzhou, supporting the heaven and earth. Now, although Mount Buzhou was very tall, it had not truly reached the state of being able to support the heavens and earth. After experiencing countless years, the Godstone seemed to have reached its limit. When the heavens and earth truly stabilized, its mission was completed, and it exploded. Boom! The divine sense in the soundless image exploded, turning into a mass of pitch-black light that blotted out the sky and the sun. It was as if the world had turned into night. Although it was silent, Tang Zheng in the audience heard a loud sound that he had never heard before. It was as if his heart had exploded. After the light dissipated, there was one more mountain in this world, Mount Buzhou. The four symbols made the final conclusion. The illusion also froze at this moment. A towering mountain that reached the clouds appeared between heaven and earth, and it was exactly the same as Mount Bujo. So Mount Bujo was actually formed after the Godstone exploded. That 4 symbols, are you also a part of the Godstone after it exploded? Tang Jing finally understood the whole story. The 4 symbols nodded. Master, you're right. That's exactly the case. Tang Jing stared at the last scene, deep in thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. His gaze moved back and forth between Mount Bujo and the 4 symbols. He pondered for a long time before finally asking, after that explosion, only the 2 of you were left of the divine stone that supported the heavens and earth? The 4 symbols did not answer. Instead, it revealed a suspicious expression and looked at Mount Bujo. Mount Bujo shook its head slightly. The 4 symbols then said, "We don't know either." Tang Jing scratched his head and thought hard. In the end, he slapped his thigh and said firmly, "Judging from the size of the Godstone and the size of the 2 of you, I'm afraid that after the explosion, the 2 of you were not the only remnants of the Godstone." The 4 symbols was pleasantly surprised. "So you're saying that there are others of our kind?" "I'm pretty sure that's the case." Tang Jing answered without hesitation. "Then we must find the remaining parts." The 4 symbols said impatiently. Mount Bujo also nodded hurriedly, as if it was as anxious as the 4 symbols. Tang Jing looked at them curiously and asked, "Why are you so anxious?" "Because we believe that once we find the remaining parts, we'll be able to see more of the scenes from back then and resolve the doubts in our hearts." "I see. All these scenes were produced when they merged with each other. If they merged with other parts, it was possible that new scenes would appear. That was of great significance to understanding the origin of the world. Then where do we find these remnants of consciousness?" Tang Jing was at his wit's end. "We don't know either." The 4 symbols shook its head regretfully. After muttering to itself for a long time, it said, "Master, I'm sure you want to know who was the one behind the light that split the chaos and the Godstone that flew from the sky, right?" Tang Jing's heart trembled. The 4 symbols had guessed his thoughts. From the moment he saw the scene in the sky, he had this question in his heart. All of this was orchestrated by someone. Then who was the orchestrator? The creator? To the heaven realm, wasn't he the creator? The heavenly Tao? When he thought of the mysterious heavenly Tao, his heart hung in suspense. If the heavenly Tao was the creator, it was possible. But since it was the creator, why did it have to rely on the Emperor of Heaven and Yen Qingyi to realize its own will? Didn't the creator have the ability to control the world they created at will? Just like how he could control the heaven realm at will, this was just a matter of a thought. Why did the heavenly Tao have to go through so much trouble? Therefore, this point didn't make sense. There were still many unsolved mysteries. The 4 symbols stared at Tang Jing and said, "Once we find the remaining Godstones, we can reconstruct the scene at that time more clearly. We might be able to find out who was the mastermind behind all of this. Perhaps, we'll be able to understand everything that happened later. For example, where did the heaven and earth mystic stone come from? How was the stairway to heaven formed?" The questions thrown out by the 4 symbols were like heavy bombs, causing a huge uproar in Tang Jing's head. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about these questions, but these questions involved the origin of the world. That was too long ago. He didn't have the energy to think about it at all, and never thought that he would have the opportunity to know all of this one day. Chapter 1565. The curtain of the origin of the world slowly opened in front of Tang Jing. He could not wait to know the secret, so he asked, "Where are the remaining God's stones?" The 4 symbols and Bujo Mountain looked at each other and shook their heads. "We don't know either." Tang Jing was greatly disappointed. He thought that there would at least be some clues, and it would be easy to follow the map. He did not expect that there would not even be a clue. This vast world was so big, where could he find the God stones? One had to know that they did not even know the size of the God stones. They could be anywhere, in the valley, in the deep sea, or even underground. There was a limit to human strength. It was impossible to truly search every corner of the world. Therefore, this was an unrealistic wish. Then we can only rely on luck. Tang Zheng sighed. He did not want to continue forcing it. This kind of thing could not be forced. Master, other than that, I have some other gains. The four symbols said again. Tang Zheng immediately stared at him, looking like he was all ears. The four symbols continued, ever since the explosion of the God's stone, I have been drifting in the world, experiencing wind and rain. One day, a tribe suddenly found me and took me back. They worshipped me day and night, treating me as a god. Tang Zheng thought for a moment before lightly nodding his head. The four symbols looked at him and said, Master, you must have guessed that this tribe was the witch tribe. At that time, it was still a primitive society. The witch tribe had already existed since then. After many years, the witch tribe grew stronger day by day. They gradually used all kinds of stone tools to polish me. After thousands of years, they finally polished me into 4 parts, which are the 4 symbols venerables. I have been worshipped by them as their guardian god for generations. The witch tribe created you. Tang Zheng exclaimed. This was very similar to his previous estimation. He thought that the 4 symbols venerables came from an extremely powerful expert. He did not expect that it came from such a simple witch tribe. 1,000 years, how many generations had it taken for them to complete this magnificent feat? The witch tribe's courage and perseverance were admirable. Another day, a goddess descended from the heavens and taught the witch tribe magical powers. From then on, the witch tribe walked the path of true power, defeating other tribes and growing stronger. Goddess from the heavens? Who is she? Tang Zheng immediately realized the key point. He had never heard of the goddess before. The 4 symbols nodded at Tang Zheng and said, Master, this goddess is none other than the Empress of the Heavens beyond Heaven's imperial family, Xiao Bai's mother. It's her. Tang Zheng was suddenly enlightened. When the Empress passed through the space door and descended to this world, he did not expect that she would be in human form. Actually, it made sense when he thought about it. The royal family had to cultivate to a certain level before they could transform into humans. The Empress naturally had this ability. Even after passing through the spatial door, she still had this ability. However, why were there almost no legends about the goddess in the sorcerer tribe? Instead, there were more legends about the holy beasts. Xiao Bai is a holy beast, so the goddess is naturally a holy beast as well. It's just a different form. Tang Zheng thought for a while and barely found an answer. Master, the ancients worshipped the strong. The more ferocious one was, the more they would be worshipped. Therefore, when the goddess fought with the other tribes, she would transform into the form of a holy beast. This was enough to intimidate the enemy and motivate the sorcerer tribe warriors. The 4 symbols explained. Tang Zheng was shocked. So there was this reason. It seemed that the sorcerer tribe's legends had their reasons. The Empress often looked at people in the form of a holy beast, so the sorcerer tribe would naturally remember this form. Perhaps the sorcerer tribe also liked this form of a holy beast, so they wrote about it. Later on, the goddess died after giving birth to an egg. She was heavily injured in the heavens beyond heaven in her early years, leaving behind sequelae. She persisted until she gave birth to her offspring. Only then did she close her eyes. The 4 symbols said bluntly, without much emotion. However, Tang Zheng could not do this. He was extremely shocked and could not calm down for a long time. If Xiao Bai knew about this, he would definitely be very excited. The next time he went to the heavens beyond heaven, he would definitely tell him about his mother's story. This was something he had the right to know. These are the memories that were stimulated after I merged with Mount Buzhou. I don't know anything else. The 4 symbols said. Tang Zheng nodded his head, this is already enough, it has answered many of my questions. Oh right, you said that the goddess taught the witch clan the primal chaos Vajra spell? Yes, it's the primal chaos Vajra spell. This ability seems to be tailor-made for the witch clan. After the witch clan cultivated the primal chaos Vajra spell, they were invincible and defeated many strong enemies. The primal chaos Vajra spell was so powerful, yet the elders and the others had yet to reach their peak state. If they wanted to recreate the witch clan's former glory, the witch clan still had a long way to go. When he returned this time, he had to find the elders of the witch clan to talk about that period of history in detail. The history of the witch clan was not as clear and concise as the four symbols description. Master, Ji Wuxiang is already dead. Where are we going now? The four symbols asked. Back to southern Yunnan. Although Ji Wuxiang was dead, he still had many followers under him. Mu Hongyan and the others were still in southern Yunnan, so he did not know if they were lucky or not. Therefore, he should hurry back and meet up with them as soon as possible. But just as this thought flashed through his mind, his heart jumped, and he immediately stopped in his tracks, saying, "Wait a moment." Then, his thoughts sank into the heavenly book. The heavenly book actually shone brightly, and the colorful light was too much for the eyes to take in. What's going on? Tang Zheng was shocked. He did not touch the heavenly book, so why would the heavenly book have such a huge reaction? Master, what's wrong? The four symbols asked anxiously. Tang Zheng seemed to have been petrified, and did not answer him. The four symbols immediately realized that he must have entered some kind of mysterious state, so they guarded in front of him, guarding against any possible danger. Tang Zheng was immersed in the heavenly book. In the past, his comprehension of the heavenly book was not too deep, and he had inherited Fushi's comprehension of the heavenly book. Of course, this could not be compared to the Emperor of Heaven. After all, he had spent his entire life studying and comprehending the heavenly book. At this moment, he was immersed in the heavenly book, and he actually felt like a fish in water. Many of the essence of the heavenly way slowly unfolded in front of him, and quickly integrated into his body and mind. How could this be? He was shocked. His eyes were wide open, and he really looked like a wooden person. He could not help but be surprised. After all, the heavenly way and Yan Qingyi were closely related, and it was impossible to determine whether they were friends or enemies. At this critical juncture, he actually miraculously comprehended more profound things in the heavenly book, and had a new understanding of the heavenly way. Facing all this, how could he not be surprised? What was the cause of all these changes? I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and peace. Because there are too many things going on at home, in the last few days of this month, this book will temporarily update a chapter every day, please forgive me. After these few days, things will be settled, and the updates will resume as usual. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1566. The mysteries of the heavenly book appeared automatically. Tang Zheng took a deep breath and suppressed his astonishment. He quickly adjusted his state of mind and comprehended the essence of the heavenly book. As time passed, the four symbols and Mount Buzhou stared at him without blinking. Swoosh! After a long while, Tang Zheng's eyes shone with a terrifying light. Then, he retreated from that mysterious realm. His expression was solemn and he seemed to be deep in thought. A mysterious veil was slowly pulled away in front of him. So that's how it is. All of this is because I read and listened to the details of the origin of the world. It seemed to contain some kind of profound principle, and then it matched with the heavenly book. The heavenly way naturally revealed itself, and I easily comprehended the essence of it. He nodded heavily and confirmed his speculation. Didn't this mean that the heavenly book or the heavenly way had some kind of mysterious connection with the origin of the world and was successfully stimulated? Master, what's wrong? The four symbols saw that he had returned to normal and hurriedly asked. Tang Zheng spoke of his experience and conjecture. The four symbols and Mount Buzhou muttered to themselves at the same time. The guardian spirit of Mount Buzhou said, "Your conjecture is indeed reasonable. Perhaps in the future when we see more scenes, the answer will naturally surface." Master, since you've comprehended a part of the heavenly book and comprehended the essence of the heavenly way, then compared to Yan Qingyi, who has a deeper understanding of the heavenly way? The four symbols asked curiously. He knew that Yan Qingyi had always been a problem that Tang Zheng was worried about. Umo revealed a bitter smile and said, "It's not as easy as you make it out to be. Yan Qingyi is the one chosen by the heavenly way. Naturally, her understanding of the heavenly way is unparalleled. That's fine. If you understand more of the heavenly way, it'll be easier to deal with Yan Qingyi in the future." The four symbols' tone changed. Tang Zheng, on the other hand, agreed with this point. He was worried about Mu Hongyan and was in a hurry to leave the 100,000 mountains. He said directly, "For symbols, we'll be leaving first. Mount Buzhou, what are your plans?" If Buzhou Shan wanted to leave, then he would put him into Sumer world. The 100,000 great mountains are my roots, so of course I will stay. This place gave birth to countless people. Now that it has been destroyed, it will regain its former glory in the future. Buzhou Shan said. He had no intention of leaving. Tang Zheng understood his thoughts and did not force him. He hurriedly bid farewell to Buzhou Mountain with the four symbols and rode the somersault cloud toward the city in Dianan. Tang Zheng had used the soul-searching technique on Ji Wuxiang, so he knew his troop arrangement like the back of his hand. As Tang Zheng had expected, Ji Wuxiang had indeed arranged two centers. One was the 100,000 mountains, and the other was Dianan City. The celestial chess pieces were set up in both places. They helped each other and supported the celestial chess pieces above Dianan and the 100,000 mountains. Yi Xuanji was the one in charge of the city. With Granny Li dead and Long Xianyuan crippled, only Yi Xuanji could be of use. Although there were other martial artists who joined Ji Wuxiang, no one could be compared to Yi Xuanji in terms of vision, methods, or experience. After all, Yi Xuanji was once the head of the Ye family. His ability was unquestionable. From afar, Tang Zheng noticed that the qi in the city had changed. It was not affected by the celestial chess of the 100,000 mountains, but the celestial chess set up in this place had changed. Under the celestial chess, no one can escape my detection. Umo had already become the new master of the celestial chess. After a simple experiment, he could already control the celestial chess with ease. As a result, his mind moved, and the huge Dianan was completely imprinted in his mind. Every detail was vivid and lifelike, like a vivid model. Suddenly, he frowned and said with a pale face, "Hongyan is in danger." Whoosh! The somersault cloud turned into an afterimage and swooped down from the sky, heading straight to a corner of the city. The ordinary people in Dianan were already used to seeing people flying around in the sky. Therefore, even if they saw a huge cloud flying down, they were not surprised at all. Ever since Ji Wuxiang took complete control of Dianan, it became a country within a country. Martial artists no longer avoided the ordinary people. They came and went, and even flew in the sky. Humans had a strong ability to accept things. Other than the initial shock and discomfort, they gradually got used to it. On the contrary, if they did not see people flying around in the sky every day, they would find it strange. It's the thundercloud beast. The four symbols pointed at a huge creature not far away. The thundercloud beast actually fell to the ground, and its body was covered with a layer of intertwined light. The thundercloud beast kept struggling and releasing lightning, but it could not completely break free from the big net. Tang Zheng's head sank. The thundercloud beast's misfortune reflected the strength of the martial artists in Dianan City. "Thundercloud beast, I'm here to save you." The four symbols could not hold back anymore. They roared and descended from the sky. The martial artists also saw the somersault cloud. They roared and soared into the sky, using all kinds of weapons to attack the four symbols. The four symbols were fearless, as if they did not see anything. They rushed into the weapons that filled the sky. Ping, ping, pang. The four beasts were completely unharmed, but the weapons were completely destroyed. They broke into pieces, and pieces fell from the sky like a fairy scattering flowers. Boom! The four symbols' feet landed on the ground, and the earth trembled. Those with weaker cultivation were directly sent flying into the air by the huge force. Who dares to hurt the thundercloud beast? The four symbols grabbed the big net on the thundercloud beast and tore it with both hands. Even the reinforced iron bones could not withstand this force. Whoosh! The big net was torn into pieces. The thundercloud beast broke free and flapped its wings. A strong wind blew, and the martial artists swayed left and right. They could not resist at all. The thundercloud beast gradually rose into the sky, and its body rapidly grew. In a short while, it became a huge creature, blocking the sun and the sky. Everyone only felt darkness above their heads, and then it lit up again. Lightning. The thundercloud beast released lightning. A thick bolt of lightning fell from the sky. Just as it was about to hit the ground, the lightning changed again, turning into thousands of tiny electric snakes, covering every corner and every martial artist. Pa, pa, pa. Immediately, the sound of electric shocks rose and fell one after another, and a thick burnt smell filled the air. Some of the stronger martial artists were able to withstand the electric shock at first, but as more and more electric snakes wrapped around their bodies, no one could withstand it anymore. They fell to the ground one after another, emitting black smoke and twitching incessantly. Apart from the four symbols who were still standing unscathed, no one else was left standing. Chapter 1567. Tang Zheng stood on the somersault cloud and looked down at the messy battlefield. Not a single enemy could stand up. However, Mu Hongyan and Nana were not here. The thundercloud beast flew in front of Tang Zheng and said guiltily, "Master, this is my dereliction of duty. I did not protect the two of them well." "What exactly happened?" Tang Zheng asked in a deep voice. "We tried to destroy the celestial chess, but the enemy was too cunning. Many of them swarmed out. We destroyed a portion of the celestial chess, but the enemy was fierce, so we could only retreat. Later, Nana wanted to go back to the Long family to take a look. When we arrived at the Long family met Long Xianyuan. Both sides had a good chat, but we did not expect Long Xianyuan to leak the news. The enemy swarmed over and surrounded us. We finally broke through the encirclement, but we were separated. In the end, I was accidentally caught in the net." The thundercloud beast roughly explained the whole story in a few words, and its eyes were filled with guilt. "Master, please punish me. This is all my fault." The thundercloud beast said dejectedly. Tang Zheng patted its head and said, "Thundercloud beast, it's not your fault. I didn't think it through. I didn't expect Ji Wuxiang's power to be so strong. This Dianan is like a piece of iron. You guys took the risk, and the danger was far beyond my expectations. Master, we must save them as soon as possible." The thundercloud beast said impatiently, very concerned about the safety of the mother and daughter. "Dianan is so big, why don't we split up and find them faster?" Tang Zheng shook his head gently. "There's no need to split up. I know where they are." In the celestial chess, everything was under Tang Zheng's control. "For symbols, let's go." For symbols stomped heavily on the ground, and the ground quickly collapsed, turning into a huge pit. Then, he soared into the sky and landed on the somersault cloud. Whiz! The somersault cloud whizzed away. The thundercloud beast flapped its wings, and its huge body covered the sky. Wherever it passed, the sunlight in the sky was blocked. The people on the ground raised their heads and looked at this huge creature in shock. It was an eye-opener. The Long family's manor had long lost its former glory. The manor with green hills and clear waters had been desolate for a long time. But today, the manor was bustling again, and there was a murderous intent hidden in the dark. Whoosh! Suddenly, a gust of wind blew from the horizon. A white cloud and a huge object flew over and stopped above the manor. The thundercloud beast flapped its wings, and a gust of wind descended from the sky, wreaking havoc in the manor. The water in the clear lake was directly swept up and soared into the sky, turning into a tornado. However, this tornado was formed by the lake water, and its power was exceptionally vast, so much so that it was even terrifying. Whoosh! Whoosh! More than a dozen martial artists soared into the sky, trying to attack. Boom! The water tornadoes moved quickly, wrapping around these martial artists. They didn't even have time to scream before they were sucked into the tornadoes. Not long after, they were flung out and fell to the ground, never to get up again. Master, are they in the manor? The thunder cloud beast asked curiously. Just now, they had already broken through the encirclement and left the manor. Could it be that they were captured again? Tang Jing nodded. This manor is not simple. It's very strange. I can feel their aura in the manor, but their exact location is very vague. The four symbols knew that Tang Zheng had mastered celestial chess, but even he couldn't find the exact location of the mother and daughter. Obviously, this was very strange. Tang Zheng wasn't surprised and explained the reason. Ji Wuxiang taught a part of the secrets of celestial chess to Yi Xuanji so that he could replace Ji Wuxiang to complete a lot of work and take charge of the work in Dianan City. So, Yi Xuanji must have done something to avoid my detection. Yi Xuanji is so powerful? The four symbols was very surprised. Back then, if it wasn't for Tang Zheng's life-continuing pill, Yi Xuanji would have died long ago. Among the major families, other than the Yan family, Yi Xuanji had suffered many losses along the way. Not only did the Ye family fall apart, even his descendants either died or betrayed him. However, he became the person that Ji Wuxiang relied on the most. One had to admit that he was powerful. No matter how powerful he is no longer a concern. Ji Wuxiang is dead, so he has no one to rely on. He is just a rootless duckweed. Tang Jing didn't take it to heart at all and said indifferently. Master is right. Without Ji Wuxiang, the others are all shrimp soldiers and crab generals. There is no need to worry about them. The thundercloud beast agreed. Master, you only need to watch the battle. I will go down and turn the place upside down to find them. The thundercloud beast was ready to make up for its mistakes. I will go too. The four symbols didn't decline. Go. Tang Jing nodded slightly and agreed. Now that he was in control of the situation, he couldn't do everything himself. Sometimes, he would let his subordinates handle it and give them space to grow. Whoosh! A gust of wind descended from the sky as the thundercloud beast dived down like a fighter jet. Before it landed, the lightning bolts had already flown out like cannonballs, landing on the ground and exploding with a loud bang, filling the sky with dust. The four symbols were simple and violent. After falling from the sky, the ground collapsed and a hole the size of a football field appeared. Martial artists rushed out from all directions and attacked the four symbols with all kinds of weapons. The four divine beasts leaped out of the crater, and a spear flew toward him. He reached out with his large hand, and the spear was caught in his hand. The terrifying forward momentum vanished, and he turned the spear around. Whoosh! The long spear flew out and pierced a martial artist's chest. The martial artist flew back and crashed into another martial artist. The long spear's momentum didn't decrease. In the blink of an eye, several martial artists were skewered by the long spear like a stick of candied haws. The way the four symbols and the thunder cloud beast appeared was unstoppable. However, the martial artists weren't afraid at all and rushed forward one after another. Tang Zheng looked at this scene and couldn't help but sigh. He didn't know what method Ji Wuxiang had used, but he was actually able to twist the scattered cultivators into a single rope. It was truly amazing that all of them were of the same mind. In front of absolute strength, there was no qualitative change in numbers. The thunder cloud beast and the four symbols were invincible. Everywhere they passed, martial artists fell. The manor was in a complete mess, riddled with holes. Boom! With a loud bang, a villa was hit by the thunder cloud beast's wings and fell apart like tofu, turning into ruins. The fists of the four beasts landed on a wall, and the wall immediately cracked open. The cracks extended like a spider web, and another building collapsed with a loud bang. The Dianan Long family spent hundreds of years to build this huge paradise-like manor. It was gradually destroyed in the hands of the thunder cloud beast and the four symbols. Tang Zheng didn't stop him. Long Xianyuan didn't understand the situation and didn't care about his family. He informed the enemy that he was already an enemy. The Long family's manor was turned upside down and all the villas were destroyed. However, there was still no sign of Mu Hongyan and Nana. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. His senses were definitely not wrong. They were in this area. Chapter 1568. Tang Zheng floated in the air, his clothes fluttering in the wind. He stretched out his hands and spread his fingers as he roared, "Let's see how you hide." Boom! With a loud bang, the soil seemed to have a life of its own as it soared into the sky. The ground seemed to have been plowed. Everything underground was overturned, and there was nowhere to hide. The four symbols and the thundercloud beast flew into the air and stopped attacking. They watched Tang Zheng make his move, their eyes shining. They had no way of finding the hiding fellows, but these fellows had no way of hiding from their master. Boom! 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 The ground was completely hollowed out, and the sky and earth seemed to have switched places. The sky was full of dust, and the ground turned into a huge pit. This pit was the size of dozens of football fields. In other words, the huge manor was completely hollowed out and flew into the air, revealing the true appearance of the underground. A few pairs of eyes looked at the true appearance of the underground and immediately widened their eyes in surprise. A huge dome was quietly hiding. If all the soil had not flown into the air, it would be impossible to discover that there was another world underground. This was not as simple as digging 3 feet into the ground. It was more than 100 meters deep. Then, wouldn't the underground dome be hundreds or even thousands of meters deep? How could such a huge project be completed without anyone noticing? In the past, Tang Zheng did not notice anything when he came here. Even he did not notice anything just now. However, he believed in his intuition, so he used his great ability to turn the manor upside down. Only then did he finally notice something. Tang Zheng sneered and said, "Let's see how you hide now." He floated toward the dome, and the 4 symbols and the thundercloud beast followed closely behind. As for the soil in the sky, it was still floating, as if it was completely supported by a mysterious force. There was no way for it to fall down. Tang Zheng landed on the dome, but it was silent and did not move. The corner of his mouth curled up, and he said meaningfully, "Looks like you still want to play hide and seek. But can you still hide?" "Master, I'll force them out." The 4 symbols volunteered. After saying that, Shan Tui stomped down. Bang! Debris flew everywhere, and a huge hole appeared. Whoosh! A beam of cold light shot out from the cave and hit the 4 symbols. The 4 symbols was not injured, but the huge force made him stagger and fall to the ground. This power actually caused the 4 symbols to fall to the ground, which showed how terrifying this power was. However, even so, the 4 symbols were not damaged at all. Lightning. The thundercloud beast quickly rushed forward. A bolt of lightning shot out from its body and disappeared into the cave. Crackle. A series of explosions came from the dome, but still, no one escaped. Is it that satisfying to be a coward? Tang Zheng said disdainfully as he stomped on the dome. Kacha. The crack started from his feet and spread in all directions. Soon, they were filled with cracks. Clang. The dome shattered, but the fragments did not fall down. Instead, as if they had escaped the gravitational pull of the Earth's core, they slowly flew into the air. Everything under the dome was displayed in broad daylight. The group of people raised their heads and looked up in horror, which happened to fall into the eyes of a few people. Tang Zheng's eyes were like torches as he locked onto his target in the crowd. Hong Yan. Nana. Tang Zheng blurted out. Tang Zheng. Brother. Mu Hongyan and Nana's eyes lit up as they looked at Tang Zheng in surprise. Nana still had tears at the corner of her mouth. She wiped the corner of her eyes, pouted, and shouted with grievance, "Brother, you finally came to save us." Tang Zheng's face immediately became gloomy as he stared at the group of people with a gaze like lightning. Yi Xuanji. Long Xianyuan. The two of them stood beside Mu Hongyan and Nana. Yi Xuanji was in high spirits, as if he was 10 years younger, while Long Xianyuan was obviously much older, as if he was an old man in his 80s. After Long Xuanyuan's dantian was shattered, he no longer had any martial arts. His spirit and qi had completely declined, and he was like a walking corpse. However, the return of Mu Hongyan and Nana allowed him to regain his vitality, as if he had found his goal in life again. He was very clear about the importance of these two people to Tang Zheng, and naturally, they were also important to Ji Wuxiang. Therefore, Long Xianyuan did not hesitate to ignore the years of kinship and reported to Yi Xuanji, helping Yi Xuanji detain the two of them. Long Xuanyuan's goal was clear: he was unwilling to fail, and tried to use the method of betraying his family in exchange for Ji Wuxiang's trust. He believed that Ji Wuxiang would definitely have a way to let him be reborn. During this period of time, Ji Wuxiang's various methods could be said to be miraculous, causing a deep shock in Long Xuanyuan's heart. Therefore, he had an almost blind worship for Ji Wuxiang, believing that he was invincible, or even omnipotent. However, he did not expect the situation to change so quickly. Not long after he detained Mu Hongyan and her daughter, Tang Zheng actually came knocking on his door. The Long family's 100-year-old manor was destroyed in an instant. He did not have the time to feel heartache, nor did he feel heartache. Without martial arts, what was the use of this manor? Without a successor, the Long family was destined to decline. He might as well use everything to take a gamble. Thus, he led many people to hide in the underground dome. This was a fortress that the ancestors of the Long family had spent decades building. Back then, it was to avoid a nuclear war, so one could imagine how sturdy it was. Furthermore, the materials used to build it were very special, which could isolate it from the outside world. Furthermore, it was deep underground, which increased the difficulty of exploration. It was precisely because of this reason that even though Tang Zheng controlled the celestial chess, he did not completely investigate the situation underground. Looking at Tang Zheng standing in the air, that dazzling gaze made Long Xuanyuan's heart jump to his throat. "Let them go." Tang Zheng roared, like a thunderbolt in the clear sky. The surrounding warriors seemed to be under great pressure, and retreated in all directions like a tide. Bang! Long Xuanyuan's legs went soft, and he directly knelt on the ground. He no longer had any martial arts, so how could he resist such pressure? His face was as pale as white paper, and he could not raise his head. Only Yi Xuanji was still bitterly holding on, and did not fall down for the time being. However, his legs were already trembling non-stop, and he could fall down at any time. Yi Xuanji clenched his teeth, and said with difficulty, "Tang Zheng, don't be arrogant, the Lord will be back soon, and at that time, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings." Ji Wuxiang? Are you still counting on him? Let me tell you, he is already dead, and this celestial chess has already fallen into my hands. Tang Zheng sneered and said straightforwardly. Impossible. Yi Xuanji's face changed greatly, and he screamed in shock, "The Lord has supreme divine abilities, how could he lose to you?" Tang Zheng shook his head. He was helpless against Yi Xuanji's stubbornness, and said, "Whether you believe it or not, you can't change this result. Whether you let them go or not, it's not up to you." Pausing for a moment, Tang Zheng sternly berated, "Go to the side." With a wave of his hand, Yi Xuanji was sent flying. He did not even have the chance to resist. This was the power of the celestial chess. Under the celestial chess, every blade of grass and every tree was under Tang Zheng's control. Not to mention Yi Xuanji, even if it was an even stronger expert, Tang Zheng was not afraid at all. Chapter 1569. Yi Xuanji flew to the side, and no one could stop Tang Zheng's footsteps. He landed in front of the mother and daughter, while Long Xianyuan knelt at the side, not even having the strength to get up. "How are the two of you?" Tang Jing hurriedly held Mu Hongyan's hand with one hand and Nana with the other, and asked with concern. Mu Hongyan did not care about her shyness, tightly held his hand, and excitedly nodded. "We are all fine, just," she looked at Long Xianyuan on the ground, then touched her daughter's head and said, "It's just that Nana suffered quite a bit of shock." Tang Jing thought for a moment, and immediately understood what was going on. For his own selfish interests, Long Xianyuan actually disregarded his family. This was especially harmful to the innocent and kind Nana, and it could be seen from the tears at the corner of her eyes. His heart trembled, and he stared at Long Xianyuan with a gaze as sharp as a knife, and said, "Long Xianyuan, are you still worthy of being her grandfather?" As Tang Zheng's voice increased, Long Xianyuan seemed to be seized by a terrifying force, and slowly flew up from the ground, gasping for breath like a cow, and his face was pale. "Grandpa." Seeing this, Nan Nan turned pale with fright and screamed. "Nana." Mu Hongyan hurriedly hugged her agitated daughter. The pain in her eyes was obvious. Even now, Nana was still so concerned about Long Xianyuan. A child's heart did not have so many dark things, only the purest of kinship. However, Long Xianyuan did not value this kinship at all, so Mu Hongyan was also heartbroken, and did not plead for Long Xianyuan at all. Long Xianyuan knew that he could not escape this calamity, and fiercely stared at Tang Zheng, gritted his teeth and said, "Tang Zheng, if you want to kill me, then kill me. The Long family was destroyed by your hands, especially the mother and daughter who were traitors of the Long family. I, Long Xianyuan, am ashamed to face my ancestors, and the Long family was destroyed just like that. Even at death's door, you still refused to wake up. The Long family was not destroyed by them, but by you. As the patriarch of the Long family, you didn't even protect your own family and loved ones, and even betrayed them. Is there a need for such a Long family to exist?" Tang Zheng asked disdainfully. Long Xianyuan was stunned. He didn't know how to answer, but soon, he shook his head and shouted stubbornly, "No, it wasn't me, it was them who destroyed the Long family, it was them." His expression was ferocious as if he couldn't wait to kill the mother and daughter. Mu Hongyan stared blankly at him, tears flowing from her eyes. Her heart was in extreme pain as she choked out, "I didn't expect you to say that about us. Not to mention that I have worked hard in your Long family for so many years. Not only have I been bullied and suppressed, but I also have to support the Long family." Nana is your biological granddaughter. She has always treated you as her most respected relative, but you said this to her. She is still a child, how sad will she be? You are too heartless. In the past, I have never complained about the Long family, and I have never complained about you. I now realize that I was too naive. Her tears finished hanging on her cheeks. Nan Nan also began to cry as she tightly hugged Mu Hongyan. She sobbed and said, "Mommy, don't cry. In the future, Nan Nan will definitely be obedient and protect Mommy." Mu Hongyan also hugged her daughter tightly, wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes, and then looked at Long Xianyuan. Long Xianyuan looked at her with a faint fear in his eyes. Suddenly, Mu Hongyan said firmly, "If you are not benevolent, then I don't need to talk about kinship with you, because you don't have this basic quality. Long Xianyuan, from today onwards, we mother and daughter have cut off all ties with the Long family. From now on, we have no relationship with the Long family." Mu Hongyan clenched her teeth to have the strength to finish speaking. After speaking, she felt her entire body relax, as if a large stone had been lifted from the bottom of her heart. These words were like a bolt of lightning that streaked across the bottom of Long Xuanyuan's heart, and he was instantly stunned. Mu Hongyan had never refuted him, and had always been resigned to it. But now, she actually dared to say such things to him, and he was deeply shocked. For a moment, he couldn't react. Tang Zheng didn't say a word, and quietly watched Mu Hongyan explode. She had too many things in her heart. If she didn't explode, not only would it hurt her body and mind, it would also have a huge impact and hidden danger on her future cultivation. Of course, he couldn't just sit back and watch. He might as well let her explode in one go and solve all the problems left behind by history. Tang Jing gently hugged her, like a peaceful harbor, giving Mu Hongyan a great sense of security. She took the opportunity to lean on Tang Zheng's chest, ignoring the gazes of others. When Long Xianyuan saw this scene, he seemed to have been greatly stimulated. He struggled fiercely and stretched out his hands to grab the mother and daughter. However, he was firmly bound by Tang Zheng's power and couldn't struggle at all. He could only scream hysterically, "If you want to leave the Long family, you have to die. No, even if you die, you can't. You were born as a member of the Long family, and you will die as a ghost of the Long family. Mother, I'm scared." Nana saw this scene and quickly hid in Mu Hongyan's arms, trembling in fear. Tang Zheng's eyes darkened, and patted Mu Hongyan's body, and said, "You two leave first, I will take care of things here. Thunder Cloud Beast, take them away." The Thunder Cloud Beast shook its body and turned into a small fellow, like a pet. It drilled into Nana's arms and cried out in a fawning manner, looking extremely cute. Nana was immediately attracted by the Thunder Cloud Beast's charmingly naive appearance. She stopped crying and hugged the Thunder Cloud Beast tightly. Mu Hongyan looked at Tang Jing gratefully, knowing that he was protecting the mother and daughter. As for Long Xuanyuan's life and death, she didn't care. She believed that Tang Jing could handle it well. "Nana, let's go." Mu Hongyan carried her daughter and soared into the sky like a dragon. She flew up from the ruins and flew far away. Long Xianyuan watched them leave in confusion, then looked at Tang Jing aggressively and shouted, "Why did you tell them to leave? What qualifications do you have to do that?" Tang Jing immediately frowned, killing Bai Lu. He stared at Long Xianyuan without blinking, and said, "Long Xianyuan, even now, you are still stubborn and do not know how to repent. If you continue to live like this, I don't know how much harm you will cause to the mother and daughter. I will never allow this to happen." "Tang Zheng, do you think I don't know what you're thinking? You're so protective of Mu Hongyan, isn't it because you covet that woman, Mu Hongyan? Don't think I don't know about the dirty things you two have done." "Enough." Suddenly, Tang Jing roared, "Hongyan is my woman, I won't allow you to slander her like this. Originally, I had let you go for Nana's sake, but it's obvious that you don't cherish these things. Since that's the case, then go to hell." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Xianyuan felt as if he was struck by lightning. That monstrous killing intent and anger made him unable to breathe. He finally knew fear. He didn't want to die. Then, he didn't even have the chance to beg for mercy, because he couldn't say a single word. A terrifying force pressed down on his neck, bit by bit, and he widened his eyes. Ka-cha! With a crisp sound, his neck broke, and he completely lost his breath. Chapter 1570. Long Xianyuan never thought that he would die like this. He still had a grand plan that he had yet to complete, but it had all turned into smoke. Yi Xuanji laid in the distance and watched this scene. His eyelids twitched, but he did not have any intense emotions. Long Xuanyuan's life and death had nothing to do with him. Although the two of them had known each other for decades, Yi Xuanji, who insisted on this belief, would naturally remain indifferent. However, Yi Xuanji was already afraid in his heart. Would he follow in Long Xuanyuan's footsteps? Tang Zheng's gaze turned and locked onto Yi Xuanji. Their eyes met, and Yi Xuanji's heart beat violently, as if it was about to jump out of his chest. Tang Zheng's heart moved slightly. He had already seen through Yi Xuanji's thoughts, and walked towards him step by step. Yi Xuanji hurriedly got up and retreated in a sorry state. He kept waving his hands and said in panic, "What do you want?" As he spoke, he retreated step by step. Tang Jing pressed on. The distance between the two of them closed. In fact, Yi Xuanji was very clear that he had no way of escaping from Tang Zheng's hands. This was a deathbed struggle. However, he was unwilling. He did not want to sit still and wait for death. Seeing that Tang Zheng was right in front of him, he suddenly leaped up, the star power from all directions gathered in his hand, and he suddenly released his palm. Toppling mountains and overturning seas. The star power surged towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zhang's expression was calm, waiting for the star power to rush in front of him. He still did not move at all. Yi Xuanji was secretly delighted. However, in the next second, his face turned ashen. He saw that the star power that could topple mountains and overturn seas was like a broken mirror. With a clang, it shattered in midair. Suddenly, the shattered star power actually transformed into a lion in midair. It was speckled with stars, as if it was real. Roar! The lion opened its mouth and roared. A gust of strong wind gushed out from its mouth and wrapped around Yi Xuanji. He was like a cannonball, rushing into the air and fiercely falling down. Tang Zheng grabbed Yi Xuanji with his big hand. Yi Xuanji struggled but still flew into Tang Zheng's hand. He looked at Yi Xuanji coldly and said, "Yi Xuanji, back then I didn't do anything to you out of consideration for Dingdong's family of 3, but you still refused to realize your mistake. It seems that you old fogies are all stubborn people. Since that's the case, there's no need for me to continue being merciful. Otherwise, who knows when you'll go against me again in the future." His voice became colder and colder. Yi Xuanji felt as if he had fallen into a 10,000-year-old ice cave. His heart was as cold as ice and he began to shiver. Yi Xuanji, who was not afraid of anything, finally knew fear. "You really killed the High Lord?" Tang Jing smiled and said, "Why would I lie to you? If he were still alive, would he still be able to sit idly by and do nothing when such a big thing happened in Dianan?" Yi Xuanji's heart dimmed. He knew that Tang Zheng's words made sense. He has already died in the 100,000 mountains. That is his final destination. You remnants of him still don't know how to repent. What awaits you will be the same as his. Tang Zheng said resolutely and decisively. His gaze swept across the people present. They all lowered their heads, not daring to look at Tang Zheng. Without a doubt, the imposing Tang Zheng was not someone they could fight against. The original confidence in their hearts was crumbling bit by bit. Ji Wuxiang's death was the last straw. They were in complete despair. Yi Xuanji was also in despair. Ji Wuxiang was his biggest support. Now that Ji Wuxiang was dead, what else could he do? But his dignity made him not want to admit defeat like this. Especially since he had known Tang Zheng for so long and witnessed his rise. But in his heart, the image of Tang Zheng still remained. It seemed that he did not want to look at Tang Zheng with the eyes of the times. Naturally, he did not want Tang Zheng to suppress him. Yi Xuanji gradually raised his head and said, "Although the High Lord is dead, we still have so many people. Dianan is a paradise for martial artists. They can create a career here and fight against you cultivators." Tang Zheng shook his head regretfully. He was really stubborn. Since that was the case, then he would kill him. He closed his 5 fingers. Yi Xuanji was immediately unable to speak. Blood could not be supplied to his brain. As a result, his face became extremely pale and his breathing gradually weakened. Suddenly, the image of Dingdong's family of 3 jumped into his mind. The strength of his 5 fingers could not help but loosen. Yi Xuanji was given a chance to breathe. He greedily took in large mouthfuls of air, but his eyes were full of ridicule and provocation when he looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes darkened. He understood a principle. Yi Xuanji was the same as Long Xianyuan in his bones. They were both stubborn people. Moreover, for the sake of himself or the benefit of his family, he would do anything. He would even sacrifice everything for his family. This kind of person was not only a scourge to himself. Perhaps, in the future, he would also cause harm to Yi Dingdong's family of 3. Even so, he might as well let him be the bad guy. After his heart was settled, his gaze became firm. Yi Xuanji, who had just gotten a chance to breathe, was suddenly startled. He looked at Tang Zheng with a dazed expression. Someone as quick-witted as him could see some clues from Tang Zheng's eyes. "You." His mind trembled. Just as he was about to speak, before he could finish a word, Tang Zheng's 5 fingers fiercely hit the contract. Kacha. Yi Xuanji followed in Long Xuanyuan's footsteps. His head tilted, and he lost his life. From then on, only the Yen family was left among the several great families. The 100-year-old family had fallen here, completely eliminated in the long river of history. When the other martial artists saw this scene, they did not dare to resist. They all knelt on the ground and begged Tang Zheng for mercy. Tang Zheng did not look at them. He did not have any big plans for these martial artists, but he was not prepared to start a massacre. It was enough to get rid of evil. There was no point in killing more. I don't care what you did in the past. From now on, let go of everything in the past. You can peacefully cultivate and live in the land of Dianan. No one will make things difficult for you or hurt you. But if there is someone who is stubborn, I don't need to say anything. You know what will happen. Do you hear me? Tang Zheng's voice was not loud, but the martial artists heard it like thunder. They all nodded like they were pounding garlic and could not wait to agree. For symbols, let's go. Tang Zheng slowly rose into the air and flew out of the crater. For symbols leaped and landed on the edge of the crater like a cannonball, splashing up dust into the air. Under the setting sun, in the distance, two figures, one big and one small, stood quietly with their backs to him. However, looking at these two figures, his heart was incomparably calm. The killing intent from before completely disappeared and turned into tenderness. He quickened his pace and walked over. When the two heard the footsteps, they turned around. Nana had no more tears. Like a little angel, she flew into his arms. Mu Hongyan smiled faintly and looked at Tang Zheng affectionately. Her eyes were filled with happiness and complete relief. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.